They're saying that he's lying, he's misleading the British public.
Former Downing Street Director of Communications under Boris Johnson, Git O'Harry, told Andrew Marr this is not the calm, competent government we were told we needed back then.
What do we have? 4 directors of communications, my old job, gone. 2 chiefs of staff, vacancy at the moment. 2 deputy prime ministers. Absolute carnage. The chief diplomat to Washington. This is not sort of competent, boring government. This is extraordinarily incompetent.
Phone bans in England's classrooms look like they'll be enforced by law as the government appears to relent to pressure from peers and campaigners. It comes as the House of Lords votes to block children's access to social media features thought to encourage addiction. But MPs would also have to back the plan for it to go ahead. 2 teenagers remain in custody over a suspected arson attack at a synagogue at Harrow in North London. Detectives are investigating possible links to Iran. A group called the Islamic Movement of the Companions of the Right has claimed responsibility. Jonathan Hall, KC, is the UK's independent reviewer of terror legislation.
It's better to treat this group, assuming as we all do that there's some link to Iran, as an emanation of a foreign intelligence service, because the powers that are available to the police are actually stronger than if they were a terrorist group.
The Iranian regime appears to have shifted its tone on upcoming peace talks. It's thought to be considering sending a delegation to Pakistan. An American team's already on its way there. An elderly man is being questioned on suspicion of murder after a woman died in a home in Exeter. Here's LBC's Alice Bell.
Officers and paramedics were called out yesterday lunchtime. When they got there, they found the body of an elderly woman. Detective Inspector Guy Bigger said he believes the woman and the man who's being questioned knew each other, and he has reassured the public they're not looking for anyone else at this time.
And London's facing travel disruption with tube strikes starting tomorrow. Underground drivers with the RMT union are staging 2 24-hour walkouts over the imposition of a 4-day week. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 59 points at 10,609. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather, clear spells this evening, drizzle in the north and lows of 1 degree. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
4 minutes past 7 on LBC. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10 o'clock this evening. You can watch us live on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel. Not sure Mark in Maida Vale will be listening there because his reaction to my talk up when I was quoting The Clash, he said, yeah, Starmer should stay, Iain Dale should go. Well, there you go. It's a point of view, isn't it? We welcome all points of view on this programme. So the big news story of the day is obviously Keir Starmer's statement in the House of Commons this afternoon, trying to justify the fact that he knew nothing. And it was everybody else's fault. I thought I'll give you a very brief summary of what I think, and then we'll go to Aggie Chambray to get all the details of what was said in the Commons this afternoon. I thought it was a perfectly competent statement, but his answering of the questions, and he did answer questions for a very long time, it wasn't very impressive. He was like a reed swaying in the wind. He had a weak voice. Everything was down to somebody else and not him. And of course, we have to remember when he was in opposition, arguing that Boris Johnson should take responsibility for things that he had not been aware of. Well, he took a very different point of view then. I suppose that's politics, isn't it? So my question to you this hour is, has he done enough to rescue his premiership today? A lot of you won't have seen it all. We'll be playing you some clips of what happened in just a few moments' time. I don't think there's any appetite within the Labour Parliamentary Party for a leadership election. I think it's partly because who is the alternative? None of them seem to be very acceptable at the moment. But if the local elections go really badly for Labour, I think that his position will probably become totally untenable. And I think he will probably see that himself. So what do you think Keir Starmer's future is? But of course, it may all change tomorrow when Sir Ollie Robbins gives his evidence to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. That should be quite interesting, because one of the things that Keir Starmer did today was effectively throw down the gauntlet to Sir Ollie, made it quite clear that he wasn't backing down, in considering that everything that's happened was Sir Oliver Robbins' fault because he didn't inform the Prime Minister. Now, I've got a little bit of sympathy with that, I have to say. I think he should have done. But will he go for him? It was interesting also the dynamic between the Speaker and the Prime Minister today, because, of course, they had a little spat by the Speaker's chair after PMQs last week. And Lindsay Hoyle seemed to delight in calling people on the Labour benches, all of whom initially seemed to be opponents of the Prime Minister. Dian Abbott, we're going to hear from her later. I thought she asked the best question of all. Emily Thornberry has not got a lot of love for the Prime Minister. John McDonnell, and so it went on. Aggie Chambray is here, as you would expect, our Deputy Political Editor. Give us your rundown of exactly what happened this afternoon, Aggie.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer blamed the former top civil servant, who of course he just sacked, Sir Ollie Robbins. He said he was deliberately kept in the dark. He said it wasn't an oversight, but a deliberate decision was taken to withhold that material from me. The material obviously being Lord Peter Mandelson's failure to pass security vetting checks. He also said, and he said this a few times, and I think he was very, very keen not only to get this across, but to get this across to Labour MPs, because I think this was kind of critical for his survival, that he would not have appointed Lord Mandelson if he'd known the peer had failed the checks, and insisted that there was no pressure from Number 10 to push through the high-profile appointments. He said again and again he'd been let down by officials, and he apologised once again and accepted responsibility for the decision to appoint Lord Mandelson, which of course a lot of Labour figures I've spoken to are still so angry about, because they thought that you could sort of see this, not necessarily this, but see the issues from space.
It's very unusual for a minister, let alone the Prime Minister, to repeatedly criticise civil servants at the dispatch box. I'm sure it must have happened before, but I can't think of an occasion when it has.
No, it's absolutely extraordinary. I mean, it's a proper, sort of felt like a proper war, a battle between the civil service and the government. And it is perhaps not totally unprecedented, but it feels pretty unprecedented, having that attention on the civil service and specific civil servants too. And the language he used, talking about his anger behind it too. And we can hear a little bit of the Prime Minister speaking in the Commons now.
I should not have appointed Peter Mandelson. I take responsibility for that decision, and I apologise again to the victims of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who were clearly failed by my decision. If I had known before he took up his post that UKSV recommendation was that developed vetting clearance should be denied, I would not have gone ahead with the appointment.
Opposition leaders were very, very critical, including, of course, Kemi Badenoch, who set out 6 questions that she wanted answers from the Prime Minister on. I'm not necessarily sure. I mean, he sort of tried to answer them. I'm not sure they were comprehensive answers. But this is Kemi Badenoch responding to Keir Starmer.
This is a man who once said, "I will carry the can for the mistakes of any organisation I lead." Instead, he has sacked his cabinet secretary. He has sacked his director of communications. He has sacked his chief of staff. And he has now sacked the permanent secretary of the Foreign Office. All of these people fired for a decision he made. The right honourable gentleman's defence is that he, a former director of public prosecutions, is so lacking in curiosity that he chose to ask no questions about the vetting process. He asked no questions about Mandelson's relationship with Epstein. He asked no questions about the security risk Mandelson posed. Apparently, he didn't even speak to Peter Mandelson before his appointment. It doesn't appear that he asked any questions at all. Why? Because he didn't want to know.
And the opposition leaders criticising and asking difficult questions of the Prime Minister did not stop there. Of course, Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey urged the Prime Minister to resign.
The Prime Minister knew that appointing Mandelson was an enormous risk. He decided it was a risk worth taking, a catastrophic error of judgment. And now that it's blown up in his face, the only decent thing to do is to take responsibility.
For now, Labour MPs I've spoken to think that was fine. That was the word used a lot. It was fine. It's over. It's okay. But all of the pressure now, all of those eyes now on 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to see if Sir Ollie Robbins, that sacked civil servant, contradicts anything the Prime Minister says.
You see, that word fine is an interesting one, isn't it? It's like if my partner says, "Oh, did you like that meal I've cooked for you?" And I said, "Yeah, it was nice." Not exactly a ringing endorsement.
Nice. It's absolutely not a ringing endorsement, but I think it's sort of, it was okay, it's over now, let's try and move on.
Aggie, thank you very much indeed. We should, of course, remember 2 MPs were ejected from the House of Commons today, Zara Sultana and Lee Anderson, for calling the Prime Minister a liar. We've got 2 MPs to chat through the events of this afternoon. We have Callum Miller with us, Liberal Democrat MP for Bicester and Woodstock. He speaks for the party on foreign affairs and also, very relevant to this, served as Principal Private Secretary to Gus O'Donnell as head of the Civil Service and himself developed vetting. And Richard Holden is here, Shadow Transport Secretary, and Kemi Badenoch, Shadow Cabinet and Conservative MP for Basildon and Billericay. Callum, given your experience of having undergone this vetting yourself and also working in the civil service, what do you make of what the Prime Minister said today?
Thanks, Ian. Well, I mean, from my perspective, this was a process bore-fest. This was an attempt by the Prime Minister to take all of the energy out of the challenge in the chamber and get everybody into the minutiae of the process. And the key claim he was making today was that there was a duty on Ollie Robbins to tell him that Peter Mandelson had failed a vetting process. And he wound out a couple of examples of statements from civil servants to support that. What he couldn't answer repeatedly was a number of members on all sides of the House pointed out to him that Simon Case, the then Cabinet Secretary, had told him on the 11th of November last year that he should get security clearance for Peter Mandelson before he announced his appointment. The Prime Minister went ahead despite that advice, made that appointment on the 20th of December, and then it was in the month after that that the clearance process started. So I think this idea that he got off the hook today in getting away from the claim that full process had been followed didn't stack up to those who were watching closely, and I think there will be real questions for him to answer after we hear from Ollie Robbins tomorrow.
But does Ollie Robbins not, I mean, it is going to be interesting to see what he says tomorrow, but does the Prime Minister not have a point when he says, well, he should have told me? There's no law that says that the head of, well, not the head of the Civil Service, the Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office shouldn't inform the Prime Minister if an appointment like this had failed the vetting. There is no such law, yet Ollie Robbins tells us there is.
So there's 2 things. There is, in fact, a section of the Constitutional Reform and Governments Act which does say that vetting is a matter for the department and not a matter for ministers. And that is, I think, where Ollie Robbins will be starting from tomorrow, in saying it was his interpretation that it was his duty to get on with it and report the outcome to the Prime Minister, not the process that went through, including what he was told by the security vetting guys.
But if you were Prime Minister, you would expect to be, I mean, the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister of the country. He's not just a junior minister or anything. And I could maybe understand that. But the Prime Minister has a right to know everything. Or maybe not. He doesn't have a right to know necessarily the minutiae of the vetting and why the person failed. But he surely has a right to know that he failed.
Well, here you come to the hub of it, Ian, because if you take on board, first of all, that he was advised by Simon Case not to appoint Mandelson until the clearance had happened, you know that he ignored that and appointed him nonetheless. And you were then the Permanent Secretary in the Foreign Office tasked with getting him into position as an ambassador. Do you not internalise that and just make it happen for the Prime Minister? Starmer's whole pretense and argument today was that he should have been told, that he's very angry that nobody thought to tell him. But if you're sitting on the other side of the table, he knew all of the information. He knew this guy was an enormous risk. He was told he should get security clearance first. He ignored that advice. He appointed him notwithstanding. So I'm not sure it's clear that Ollie Robbins would have felt a duty to come and say, hey, Prime Minister, I know it's going to be an enormous surprise to you, but Peter Mandelson's got some difficult stuff in his past and it's causing a few issues. I think rather he would have thought, well, the Prime Minister has effectively instructed me to make this so and get this guy out to Washington by the 10th of February.
Richard Holden, Kemi Badenoch did something unprecedented today. She actually told the Prime Minister in advance of his statement what she was going to ask him, and she gave him 6 questions to answer. Did he?
Well, the first one, as Callum said, is exactly the question which is on everyone's lips, which is around Simon Case's advice back in November 2024. It was quite clear that the civil service, the most senior civil servant, gave the Prime Minister the clearest possible advice. And that was to get Lord Mandelson security vetted before any appointment was announced. The Prime Minister ignored that advice. And the Prime Minister has not been able to answer why he ignored that advice at all. That is still the burning question at the moment. And I've literally just run over from the Commons, where tomorrow what's known as a Section 24, Standing Order 24 debate is going to happen, which is 3 hours, proceeds all government businesses put to one side. And basically this entire issue will be dealt with again tomorrow in the House of Commons chamber, because the Speaker is clearly views this as a matter of such national importance. And it's very rare for a Standing Order 24 debate to be granted.
So who's called for that?
So Kemi called for it. She was given literally just before I came into the studio, she was given 3 minutes to put forwards why it's so important that all government business must be put to one side tomorrow, and there will be a 3-hour debate on a substantive motion, and that's what's going to be there tomorrow as the first item of business after questions tomorrow.
And does the Prime Minister have to reply to that?
Well, Kemi made it very clear in her application that given this is about questions relating to the Prime Minister, that she thought that it would be the Prime Minister should be the one responding, that she hoped he would not try and duck that and pass it on to a junior minister. I very much hope that it will be the Prime Minister who responds, because this is all about his credibility and actually his judgment, as Callum has said. I think actually, it's not, Callum and I aren't always on the same side on these issues, and actually a lot of Labour MPs, like John McDonnell, also raising very, very serious questions today. Dian Abbott, these are people I am not normally on the same side of the argument on, really raising important issues. And this goes to the heart of, actually, the truth is behind all of this. It seems pretty clear that the Prime Minister, and Ollie Robbins actually wrote a letter to me when I was raising questions about this back in July last year, and he made it very clear in that letter that, quotes, Lord Mandelson was directly appointed to the role by ministers to take advantage of his political experience and skill. He was directly appointed. This is the Prime Minister's judgment. The Prime Minister's judgment to appoint him, the Prime Minister's judgment to appoint him despite the fact that the civil servants had told him to wait for any vetting to come through. It may well be the case that this vetting was waved through, but he'd already been appointed. So it's pretty clear, if you're the civil servant sat there saying, well, the Prime Minister, we gave him the advice to wait for vetting, and he's appointed him anyway. So there's no point in sending anything else through. But there's real questions as well around exactly who in number 10 knew what and when. The Prime Minister seems to have doubled down on the fact that nobody in number 10 was informed today under questioning. I find it, and I'm sure your listeners find it really difficult to believe that, all of these issues have been raised and front pages of newspapers going on for months and months and months, that nobody thought to raise any of this with any senior officials in number 10. It really stretches credibility. I actually think the public have already made up their minds that they're not sure that they don't think the Prime Minister is being straight with them, and I think that's a really clear point here, that he's not being. It's either so incompetent that he shouldn't be in office, or he's just lying to them.
You, I imagine, were both out in your constituencies at the weekend. Was this top of the conversation with constituents? Because I keep being told, this is such a Westminster bubble issue. Normal people aren't interested in this.
It was a close fight with potholes. On occasion, it made it up there. Genuinely, I had a number of people say to me, "Look,
remind me, who controls Oxfordshire County Council?"
It's Liberal Democrats making up for the mistakes of the Conservatives, Ian, as you know well. But no, people were saying to me, look, we're in incredibly serious times here. They're worried about what's happening in Iran. They're worrying about the prices at the pumps. And what they see is an enormous distraction. They see a Prime Minister who's not focused on the things they want him focused on, not delivering the change he promised, whether that's policy and outcome change or whether that's a change in how government is conducted. And I would say, across the doors I was knocking on, a good half of them, it was raised with me.
You don't think he's going to go? Ed Davey called for him to go. Kemi Badenoch's called for him to go. He's not going to go, is he?
Well, we've got some information out today. Richard has set out a process. Liberal Democrats strongly supported an emergency debate tomorrow. We would have called for it ourselves if the Conservatives hadn't been selected to make the case. There will be more time to scrutinise things tomorrow. He's survived today. We've seen some critical voices from the Labour benches. We've seen some very uncomfortable Labour MPs on the back benches. Whether or not he gets through this for the next few days, I think remains to be seen.
And Richard, isn't it to your advantage to keep him there sort of swinging in the wind?
I think genuinely, we're seeing now the Prime Minister's judgment on issue after issue being called into question. I think this is the most high profile of them because it affects our national security, it affects our foreign relations with our closest intelligence and defence ally. But I think it actually speaks to a broader issues, and you can see that by the appointments and then the sackings he's had to make of people like Sue Gray, who was his first Chief of Staff, his second Chief of Staff. He brought in a new Cabinet Secretary after sacking the first Cabinet Secretary, and now he's had to sack the second Cabinet Secretary. All of these really, his Director of Communications has gone, all the really senior people around him he's brought in and fired at least once. And it's pretty clear to me that his judgment right across the board is really under threat. So whether or not it's in my party's interest that Keir Starmer goes, or, it's slightly irrelevant, because I actually think it's in the good of the country that the Prime Minister actually is changed to somebody who at least has a confidence in their own judgment. I'm really worried about the judgments that he's making when it comes to so many issues at the moment, and this being, I think, the most important one, where it appears that he seems unwilling to accept the fact that this was his call. He keeps falling back, as Callum said, to process. It's all about process. No, it's not about process. At the end of the day, it's about his judgment, and he seems totally unwilling to accept that. And I think that sort of speaks to so many other issues, whether it comes to, the government came in talking about growth and then put all these burdens on business, all sorts of other areas where he sort of talks about something, but then actually his actions just never stack up to it. Not even remotely. He's not even aiming in that direction.
OK, Callum, one final question to you, which I've only just thought of. I mean, the fact that he repeatedly threw civil servants under the bus today in his statement and in his answers, I mean, there may be consequences from that. I mean, you've served as a civil servant. I mean, that's not going to go down well with not senior civil servants, but rank and file ones too.
I think it's a real concern, Ian. I mean, it's very striking that from the moment in September when the worst of the Epstein allegations came out into the public eye, I think it was 9 days before the Prime Minister got to the point where he sacked Peter Mandelson. I think it was about 12 hours between he becoming furious and sacking Ollie Robbins. And people will notice that there's quite a big difference between, giving secrets away to commercial beneficiaries on the one hand and possibly, debatably, not following a bit of due process on the other. It will chill the relationship between civil servants and ministers and do the government damage.
Right, we will hear from David Davis and Dian Abbott in just a few minutes' time. I thought Dian Abbott's question was probably the most... I mean, I think it caused a real sort of gasp from the rest of the Commons. We'll play that out to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, Richard Holden and Callum Miller for the Liberal Democrats. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call to give your reaction to today's events. It's 24 minutes past 7.
This is LBC.
Calling all young creatives. Kickstart your career in media. Apply now and join us in years 10 or 12 at Global Academy. globalacademy.com.
3, 2, 1, 0% APR on an all-electric Mini Cooper. What was that, Luton? Handling is extraordinary, centre of gravity so low, and it could be ours with a 15% deposit and 3-year term. OK, Luton, reroute me to the nearest Mini retailer now.
Land a new all-electric Mini Cooper with 0% APR. Report to your Mini retailer today. Mini UK is a credit broker. Ordered and delivered by 30th of June. PCP finance with Mini Financial Services. Subject to status. 18+. T's and C's apply. Mini.co.uk/Cooper.
I'm Will Buxton.
I'm Naomi Schiff.
I'm David Coulthard.
And I'm Jolie Shaw.
This is Up to Speed.
Available every Monday and Thursday on Global Player or wherever you get your podcasts.
It was just another day. A familiar drive through familiar country. But then, just around the corner, came the unexpected. He'd let his speed creep a little too high as he approached a bend. And he was no longer driving at the right speed for the road. The scary thing is, he didn't even realize. Driving even a little too fast for the situation is a major cause of collisions, especially on country roads where you don't know what's around the corner. Think. Don't let your speed creep.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
7:25 on LBC. Michael says, you're right, most normal people are not interested in this Westminster board game. Well, I didn't say that. I said that's what a lot of people keep telling me. I'm not convinced by that. David Davis is here, Conservative MP for Goole and Pocklington, former Brexit Secretary under Theresa May. served with Ollie Robbins as your permanent secretary, which we might come on to in a second. Do you get that when you're talking to people who say, we're not interested in that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, we've had a previous SO24 emergency debate. On this, I had one. I can't remember, I think it was October, anyway. And I was astonished. I don't normally do ad hominem politics at all. But, I was taking Mr. Lord Mandelson apart in the House. And I was astonished by the number of people who came up to me in the street, stopped me on the train, everywhere, for about 4 weeks thereafter. Nothing. My big campaigns, my civil liberties campaigns, my miscarriage of justice, nothing delivered that sort of outcome. So, no, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with this thing. I mean, in one sense, it's a piece of history now. It's in the past. But it is a measure of the Prime Minister's judgment. But
how can you make a judgment on something that you say you don't know anything about, that you haven't been told, so you can't make a judgment?
Well, the very fact that he waited to be told. I raised a question in the House with him today, and he kept rebutting both Kemi and the Lib Dem leader. And when they said, well, you were told at the time by Simon Case that you should have check first, the security check first, announcement second. And he pushed that back and said, and he waffled around it, created smoke. So I read out in the chamber what had actually been said to him. It's plain as a pikestaff. He was told that in terms by Simon Case.
But my recollection is that the appointment announcement was leaked, possibly by Peter Mandelson. And so therefore they had to sort of make an official announcement within a couple of days.
Well, one, they should simply have said, he's one of the people under consideration, because at that point that should have been the case. He was not cleared. They wouldn't have to say why. So that was the first thing they should have done. Not be played, frankly, by Peter Mandelson. But frankly, they shouldn't have confirmed it to Peter Mandelson either until it was cleared. I mean, look, this is not often. I mean, a lot of the rules they talk about relate to existing ambassadors, diplomats who have, let's say, a previous diplomat in Washington, I think previously had been in Istanbul, had been the ambassador to Turkey. Now, he would have had a security check then, so only 4 years before. And so the only amount of security check was at the bit in between, and it, had anything gone wrong in that time. This was completely different. This was a man with a track record of scandal, losing his job twice, lots of questions about how he handled his time at the European Commission. With the Russians, with his relationship with the Chinese, the way he ran his business, all these sorts of things. And a man who describes himself as a prince of darkness, for heaven's sake.
I'm not sure he described. Did he describe himself as that? I think that was given to him.
That's probably an exaggeration. What he certainly did was gloried in it. He liked the fact.
Well, you have a certain reputation which you glory in.
I don't glory at all.
Okay, so what happens now? We've got Ollie Robbins appearing before the Select Committee. Now, as I said before, you worked with him when he was Permanent Secretary in your department as Brexit Secretary. I think it's fair to say that you didn't always see eye to eye.
Well, I had him moved. During the general election, he gave away two of our biggest negotiating levers. I just said to Theresa May, I don't want him in the department anymore. So, to my mild surprise, she moved him to number 10.
Yeah, which wasn't necessarily the best move from your point of view, was it?
The best move from my point of view, but there you go, we all make mistakes.
But from what you know of him, what do you think is likely to happen tomorrow?
Well, first thing to say is he's not a dishonourable man. He is, when I fell out with him, basically he was obeying orders from the Prime Minister, not from his line manager, which was me. Now, he probably thought that was the right thing to do, and it may well be that all of this nonsense that's gone on here was him in a sort of Henry II, Thomas à Becket moment, doing what he thought the Prime Minister really wanted but didn't dare say. After all, from his point of view.
Which is what's happened here, isn't it, frankly?
Yeah.
In that he thought he got his marching orders to get Mandelson appointed.
Exactly right.
So he went and did it.
Yeah, exactly right. And then they invent all sorts of things around it. All this stuff we've had over the weekend of what's called shorthand crack, the Constitutional Reform and Governance Act back in 2010, They said, well, that stops us telling the Prime Minister. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. But it's them trying to reinvent the world to justify Ollie's actions. But as I say, he could well have done it for very honourable reasons, trying to deliver, very short-sighted in my view. The Americans will be pretty displeased with us because of the Five Eyes intelligence stream that goes through that embassy. You see, in our in American embassies, the CIA is freestanding. They don't report to the ambassador. In our embassies, MI6 and the various intelligence operations do report to the ambassador. So he's completely across it. Now, how do you think the Americans, who are always incredibly sensitive about their intel...
But also the fact that, and I don't think this is a secret, Ollie Robbins was involved with the security services and I think applied to be the head of MI5, and Starmer didn't give him the job.
It is said, yeah.
I wonder if that's got any role to play tomorrow, sort of getting his own back.
No, I don't think so. I think actually that application was earlier, and
right.
he. Listen, this is all by rumour. There's no notification of this, but he certainly dealt with things for MI5 in the past. I know that from my other campaigns on torture and rendition and so on. He appeared, and on Edward Snowden, he appeared in that.
Yeah.
So yes, he certainly had that relationship. He understood it well, and so you would have thought he would have been ultra sensitive to it, but evidently not.
OK, David Davis, thank you very much indeed. Right, we will come to your calls in the next half an hour of the programme, 0345 6060 973. We're going to talk about this after 9 o'clock too, so if you don't get on in the next half an hour, you will do after 9. And we're also going to be talking to Dian Abbott, who I thought asked the most incisive question in the whole of this afternoon's proceedings. We'll play it out to you and then we'll get her views live in the studio. It's 7:33, news headlines on LBC with Matt Hewitt.
The Prime Minister claims he was deliberately kept in the dark after his pick for ambassador to the US, Lord Mandelson, failed vetting checks. Sir Keir Starmer told the Commons Foreign Office procedures have now been changed after officials overrode the recommendation not to grant the peer security clearances. A woman from Manchester has been charged with attempted murder after a car hit pedestrians in central London. The crash happened near the London Palladium in the early hours of Sunday, leaving a woman in a life-threatening condition and 2 others injured. And a shadow Home Office minister says that attacks on the Jewish community have become a national emergency and Iranian diplomats should be expelled if Iran is found to have been involved in them. 2 teenagers are being questioned over Saturday's suspected arson attack at a synagogue in Harrow in North London. LBC weather, clear spells this evening, drizzle in the north, lows of 1 to 4 degrees.
LBC.
The following is from TfL.
My name was Luna, like the moon. I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Get that Toyota electric feeling with the all-new, all-electric Toyota Urban Cruiser. Available with 0% APR representative and £1,500 deposit contribution. And save £1,500 with the Toyota Electrified Saving. Visit your nearest Toyota centre. Price from $29995. Available on Toyota PCP when financed through Toyota Financial Services by 30th of June 2026. Optional final payment. Indemnities may be required. See website conditions apply.
Oh, you want weight loss advice?
Weight loss? Actually, what you want to do...
I got my weight loss secret from my mother, who got it from her mother's my mother. Weight loss?
Forget that. You just
keep dancing. Dragon fruit.
Podcast.
Advice.
Or you could go to MedExpress. MedExpress. Healthcare without the noise. Go to medexpress.co.uk/weight loss.
Ali 60mg hard capsules contain orlistat for overweight adults with a BMI of 28 plus. Follow a reduced calorie, low fat diet. Always read the label.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:35 on LBC. Well, let's continue our discussion of what happened in the House of Commons this afternoon, where Keir Starmer made a statement to explain his actions or lack of actions or why he didn't know things. As I said at the beginning of the hour, I thought that his actual statement was reasonably convincing. but it's when he was questioned, that's when he seemed to come apart. Let's just hear the question that Independent MP Dian Abbott put to him.
The Prime Minister has gone on at considerable length about process and procedure, but ordinary people don't really care about process and procedure. They want transparency, and they want to know that they can have confidence in the words of elected politicians, like all of us in this chamber. On the question of Peter Mandelson, it was in the 90s that Peter Mandelson had to resign from the cabinet for the first time because of his dealings with the millionaire Geoffrey Robinson. It was a few years later he had to resign from the cabinet for the second time because of his relationships with the billionaire Hinduja family. Peter Mandelson has a history. Peter Mandelson has a history. And what this House wants to know is why, knowing Peter Mandelson's history, going back now 30 years, and given what has been known, it's one thing to say, as he insists on saying, nobody told me. Nobody told me anything. Nobody told me. The question is, why didn't the Prime Minister ask?
A brilliant question, a simple question in some ways, but what did you make of his reply, Dian?
I wasn't impressed by his reply. I thought he kind of got away with his statement, but it all fell apart when he had to answer questions. And what struck me, because I sit on the front there, quite close to him, was that his hands were shaking. He seemed quite nervous. And I was a civil servant years ago, and I just don't accept that he didn't know anything and nobody told him anything.
So he's lying?
I just don't accept that. It's not necessarily that people told him a kind of deliberately, if you like, but he would have known. He would have known.
So when Ollie Robbins says, well, look, I was prevented from convention or the law or whatever from actually telling the Prime Minister or any minister this, you think he should have asked, but how would he have known to ask?
Because of Peter Mandelson's history. Nobody in their right mind would send Mandelson to Washington as our ambassador, just on the basis of what's in the public domain. So on the basis of Peter Mandelson's history, he should have known to say, well, is there anything around security?
See, the thing with that is that I remember, I don't know if you read this, but Alva Ray, the political editor of The New Statesman, did a sort of deep dive into all of this a couple of months ago. And she said that Keir Starmer himself was not keen on appointing Peter Mandelson, that he wanted George Osborne, utterly bizarrely, or even Bear Grylls, which I thought was even more bizarre. But anyway, and he had to be convinced to do it by Morgan McSweeney, his then Chief of Staff. So you think, well, surely that would have sort of set a warning bell off in his mind, saying, okay, Morgan, you think he's so brilliant, why? And what about all these problems we've got with Epstein and all the rest of it? And yet nothing like that seemed to occur to him.
Well, I think to a degree, Starmer was kind of McSweeney's spell. And because, generally speaking, Starmer only joined the party in 2014. He's not really a party person. He's not really somebody that gets engaged with politics. So I think he relied on McSweeney. McSweeney was very close to Starmer, not just to Starmer, but to Mandelson. And that's how it all went wrong.
So Ollie Robbins is going to give his evidence tomorrow. I think he will have reacted very badly to the fact that Starmer didn't only say what he said the last week about him, he doubled down on it in many ways. And also, he kept referring to Foreign Office officials, so not just Ollie Robbins. And you think, well, this is a Labour Prime Minister who has got a reputation of always playing by the rules and all the rest of it, and yet he's throwing civil servants under the bus. Now, you've been in Parliament since 1987. Can you remember a Prime Minister ever doing that before?
No, I can't. I've been in Parliament for 38 years. I've never seen a Prime Minister do that. I found it quite distasteful. I mean, he's the one that said all along that you have to take responsibility for your officials, and that's exactly what he didn't do.
Well, there's a very interesting clip doing rounds on social media at the moment of him accusing Boris Johnson of all the things that he's now being accused of, and yet he's got no answer to that either. I mean, do you think that I know you're an independent MP now because you're not in the Labour Party anymore, or not as an MP. Do you think the Labour Party has the appetite to get rid of him?
No, I don't think so. I think that there was a feeling all along, even before this Mandelson thing blew up, that you don't want to get rid of him before May, because better to have him there and carry the can for what's going to be a terrible result in May. But I don't think he's going to take us into the next general election.
Well, if there is a leadership election, I think every candidate will be asked, not least by me, are you going to have Dian Abbott back in the party? Would you want to go back?
Yes, I've been a Labour Party person all my life, so I would like to go back.
OK. Dian, thank you very much indeed. That's Dian Abbott there, independent MP for Hackney and Stoke Newington and former Shadow Home Secretary. Right, let's go to your calls. The first one is from, and I can't see because there's something covering the screen, Jerry in Whitley Bay. Hello, Jerry.
Good evening,
Evening.
Ian. Can I make two cases? A case for the prosecution and the defence.
Go on.
The FCDO should not really be allowed to override the security vetting. There's no good reason that the person who is making the appointment should not be told the result of the vetting. Because ultimately, if you're making the decision, you can't have somebody come in and just say, oh, you can't do that. And you're going to ask why. Say, well, I can't tell you. Well, if you know what the process is, you're going to know why they failed. So that's just silly. You don't have to tell them the information as to why they failed, but you should be able to tell them that they failed. I'm not sure why anyone didn't tell Starmer obliquely. Now, by that I mean people obviously knew, and the insinuation is that only Ollie Robbins knew. Clearly, that's not the case, because the Guardian knew before Starmer did. So somebody leaked it, and it wasn't just Robbins, because David Maddox at The Independent had been asking questions, and he had sources, both this side of the Atlantic and the other, that said he had failed the vetting. Now, that should have been a red flag in itself, because my understanding of journalism, I'm not a journalist, is that either you get multiple sources telling you the same thing, or you have a single source that has what's called primary evidence. So you have seen a document from government or whatever, and you say, yes, that on its own is credible. Now, Tim Allen was understudy to Alistair Campbell in the last Labour government. He understands all this. That should have been setting alarm bells off right there.
Well, it absolutely should. And that's what I think Starmer failed to address this afternoon, because Kemi Badenoch asked him about it, various other MPs did too, and he didn't really answer that question. Now, neither of us know, Jerry, whether Tim Allen alerted the Prime Minister to the fact that these questions were being asked. If he did, then Dian Abbott, Kemi Badenoch, whoever, can accuse of Keir Starmer of not telling the truth. If he didn't know, then you have to say, well, what kind of organisation are you running in Downing Street where your staff don't think that they should tell you something like this? That, I think, is where it doesn't become a conspiracy. It becomes all about competence. And any Prime Minister should have staff who are able to approach them and tell them anything. You have to speak truth to power. And the worst Prime Ministers are those that have members of staff, advisors, who don't feel they can tell them the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And it may be that that's what we've got at the moment.
The key point here is you will have worked in a workplace. Rumours go round like there's no tomorrow. Now, I know Kat Lizzle has supposedly said, well, I knew 2 weeks before the Prime Minister, but I couldn't tell him.
She's the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary.
Yep. I couldn't tell him because I needed legal advice. Now, any number of people clearly knew at that time. You know, the Guardian knew.
Well, the new Cabinet Secretary, Antonio Romeo, knew.
Yeah. You can do these a lot of ways. You can say, I really think you should look into this, Prime Minister.
But you see, that's where I do have a modicum of sympathy with Keir Starmer, because both of those people should have told the Prime Minister, should have had a word with him, whether it was oblique or direct, and yet they didn't. And so if I was Keir Starmer, I would feel rightfully aggrieved that conversation was not had.
Well, yes, but the point is that really credible? Is it really credible that half the journalistic people out there knew about this, the Prime Minister didn't, the whole of Westminster is a rumour mill that goes around like nothing on earth, and Starmer is the only person that never heard the rumour?
Yeah, well, that is... I mean, you see, there are other Prime Ministers. David Cameron, for example, he wanted to know all the gossip. And you might think, well, that's a bit shallow. But actually, that is part of the job. You need to know what's going on, either within your government and within Parliament. Jerry, thank you very much indeed. KC says Iain Dale is obviously not listening to the facts regarding Sir Keir. He's unprofessionally allowing his political bias to cloud his view. Well, that's what people will always say if I criticise a Labour politician. But I'm not alone in doing that today. I don't think Keir Starmer has emerged from today with any great credit at all. And that's down to him. That's just my interpretation. You can call it bias. I'm just giving you my honest opinion, which is what I'm paid to do. 7:48.
This is LBC.
Tony, what do you want to tell me? Good morning.
Scott has called from Glasgow. Hi, Scott.
Jane's in Camden first. Hi, Jane.
Our focus in the last few weeks has been on getting the Strait of Hormuz open, because all the time it's not open for free navigation. That is impacting our economy and our energy bills. It's my job to protect the British public from that.
Hear every side of the story.
Starmer is going to have to get involved.
America has to get rid of Trump before he continues down this road of leading the world into a global economic crash.
It just feels like passing much of a luxury now to keep your health.
I'm almost in my 40s and I haven't ever had a break in war, in any of these living costs.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
Noticed a change in your hearing? Well, get a hearing check from Specsavers. Oh, not sure where to start? Well, we're very flexible. Book one online, on the phone, on your lunch break, on Saturdays, on the same day if you're lucky. Oh, you only miss the odd word. But what if the odd words you're missing are nice ones like love you, or important ones like duck? Oh, too expensive, is it? All right, we like you. We'll do it for nothing. For free hearing checks, should have gone to Specsavers.
Nothing beats that just booked feeling. Because when you book a Jet2 holiday, you start dreaming of pool days and seeing the sights. Get ahead for summer. Book now with just a £60 deposit per person. Choose from our best rooms and hotels and save £200 per couple. Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. Package holidays you can trust. International protected. Subject to availability and conditions.
Listeners, we interrupt the airwaves to share an incredible discovery. The reason why Britain hasn't been so great of late is because the country hasn't been eating enough Weetabix. We must get to work in rebuilding Great Britain, Bix by Bix. By delivering Weetabix to whoever plans the traffic diversions, to delivery drivers who can't seem to find your house, and people who don't stack the dishwasher properly. To Britain, we must say, have you had your Weetabix?
Bring your pensions together into one easy-to-manage online plan with PensionBee. Because when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. when investing your capital is at risk.
Your time is valuable. Your perspective should be too. The Economist cuts through the noise with the stories that truly shape your world.
How can you believe that a new regime won't crush you just like the previous one?
Online scams are stranger than they've ever been.
When the world's turned upside down, know which way is up. Read, watch, or listen to The Economist.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
7:51. It's always a pleasure to flick through all the messages during a break. This one's from GB. I'm switching off your ludicrous show and watching old Frankie Howard clips instead. Nay, nay, and thrice nay. People are looking at me through the gallery thinking, who's Frankie Howard? Right, just as a bit of entertainment, and Frankie Howard I think would enjoy these two clips, we're going to play you what happened when two MPs, first of all Lee Anderson and then Zara Sultana, accused the Prime Minister of lying. First, Lee Anderson.
The problem the Prime Minister's got is no one believes him. The public don't believe him. The MPs on this side of the House don't believe him. His own gullible backbenchers don't believe him. So does the Prime Minister agree with me? He's been lying.
Prime Minister, sorry, we don't use those words, and I'm sure the members withdrawn it.
Mr. Speaker, I have the greatest respect for you and your office, but I will not withdraw. That man couldn't lie straight in bed.
Order. Mr. Anderson, you'll have to leave.
Speaker, in September the Prime Minister stood at this dispatch box and told the House he had full confidence in Peter Mandelson, a man whose relationship with convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein was public knowledge. The Prime Minister knew and backed him anyway. Now he claims he had no idea that this twice-fired government minister had failed MI6 vetting, despite journalists putting that directly to Downing Street that very same month. Mr. Speaker, we all know that the Prime Minister appointed Mandelson because he owes his job to him. Yep. He appointed him, he defended him, and now he claims to know nothing. He is gaslighting the nation. So let's call this out for what it is. The Prime Minister is a barefaced liar, and if he had any decency left...
No, order. Sit and leave. Leave now. I'll name you otherwise. I'd go now if I were you. Leave. I'm not. Leave. I've no name. I've given the option to leave. I'd leave if I were you very quickly. Move before I read it and give me one option. Right, give me that. You have no duties. It's my duty to carry out and control this House. One chance. Do you want to leave now or not?
Right. To tell the truth, that the Prime Minister is
I name Zara Sultana. Minister, I beg to move that the said member, be suspended from the House.
Now, it is not often that MPs are thrown out of the House of Commons, but I can't remember the last time two were in the same day. I'm sure it must have happened before. If you know that it has, do let me know. 84850 is the text. Right, let's go to Jeevan in Ilford. Hello, Jeevan.
Hi, Ian. Good evening. Ian, all I would say is that my mind is asking the question, is Keir Starmer a manager of a football team, or is he the player in the football team? Which rule is he applying? If he's applying the rule of being a player, then he should ask the question that he did. Process. But what team did you get together that should be working with you? What have you done to enable the team to be there to provide the information to you? And are you managing the information you're obtaining?
I think the problem is, Jeevan, that at the moment Keir Starmer seems to be playing for Spurs.
Well, he seems to be playing for somebody that is not his team, obviously, and he's certainly not concentrating on managing either.
So what do you think will happen at the end of this? I mean, I think there is an argument that he ought to resign just on principle, that he called on Boris Johnson to act honourably and take responsibility for things that he actually wasn't responsible for.
That may be his wish in history, but let's look at it sensibly. I think what will happen at the end of the day is it will be referred to the executives to look at the fact whether he was absolutely crystal clear, or did he what's the word? He was being very calmly and trying to prevent any further damage to himself.
Well, I mean, I don't blame him for that. Any politician is going to want to minimise the damage to themselves, aren't they?
Yes, but the managers will look at it, that how much did he hide or not hide in answering the questions that were asked.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Nikki says, when Mandelson was first appointed, we didn't hear broadcasters or politicians claiming he shouldn't be ambassador to the United States. Well, some did say that. I'll admit I didn't. So the outrage now feels utterly hypocritical. What was truly disgusting, though, is the behaviour in the chamber from figures like Lee Anderson and Zara Sultana. Heaven help us if people like that get anywhere near number 10. The country would be in serious trouble within months. And how quickly people forget. Many were only recently praising Kemi Badenoch, yet with her or Nigel Farage in charge, we could well be on a path to conflict with Iran. Since Keir Starmer took office, the knives have been out, and I say that as somebody who isn't even a Labour supporter. Was a lot of whataboutery in that text, isn't there? Let's go to Johan in Greenwich. Hello, Johan.
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
My point is very simple, right? It's very straightforward. If you're managing, you manage by exception, right? You can't be doing all 100% of everything, so you delegate responsibility.
Well, I agree.
Let me speak.
Let me just on that point, Johan. Yeah. I agree with you that is what the Prime Minister is there to do. A Prime Minister like Gordon Brown and Theresa May were very much control freaks. You do have to delegate, but when it is your own personal decision to appoint the ambassador to the United States and not going with a civil servant, as is the custom, then I think you do have to take responsibility.
Right, but you don't leave you don't leave the appointment to the civil service, right? The executive decides.
But you do.
No. Let me finish my point without interruption. The executive appoints delegates the responsibility to someone, right? I want you to do the security check or whatever, and it is because I'm making this appointment, right? And you manage by exception. If it's positive, you don't want to hear. Right? You don't want to know. If it's negative, i.e. exception, you want to know. Otherwise, you would never get anything moving.
Yeah.
You'll be looking for positive results all the time and not actually make progress.
But
right?
what do you make of...
That's my simple point. So what hasn't been established is that Starmer knew that there was an exception.
No, and he says he doesn't know.
Exactly, that's what I mean. It wasn't reported to him. Exceptions should have been reported to him. When you're delegated a responsibility, that is, it is upon you to report back what the exception is. It's like a black box. It goes into a black box.
But when Starmer fired Mandelson in September last year, do you not think that he should have asked further questions about, once all these facts about Epstein came out, wouldn't your first... Hang on a second, Johan. Wouldn't your first reaction be, OK, well, if we didn't know about Epstein, what else didn't we know about his vetting? I mean, I'm sure that would be a natural reaction for most people.
Yes, but we are talking about the appointment, right? The appointment was far before that. And he was dismissed in September. How much of significance is there since then to know what other involvements he had? Because it was about the appointment. Starmer apologized for that appointment.
And you think that should? And you think that should?
This is the Epstein file.
And you think that should be the end of it?
Yeah, but it was still not reported to him. It is a responsibility of the person to whom it was delegated to report it. Even at that point, the idiot who in the civil service did not report it back as an exception.
Yeah, well, his view is that he couldn't report it because the convention was that you don't talk to politicians about vetting. But, I mean, the man was the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister does have a right to know these things, in my view. Thank you very much indeed. On Cross Question in the next hour, I'll be joined by the Labour MP for Gloucester, Alex McIntyre, Joe Robertson, Conservative MP for the Isle of Wight East, Sarah Olney, Liberal Democrat business spokesperson and MP for Richmond Park, and the journalist and broadcaster Angela Epstein. They'll be here to take your calls. I'm sure that you may want to ask about the events of today, but there are other things going on today as well. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call or WhatsApp. You can text on 84850, and if you're not already watching us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel, now's your chance to rectify that.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Prime Minister claims a deliberate decision was repeatedly made not to tell him Lord Mandelson failed security vetting despite becoming US ambassador. Sir Keir Starmer says it's staggering the information was withheld from him, adding if he'd known, he'd never have hired him. The senior civil servant at the Foreign Office left his job last week, but Helen McNamara, a former Deputy Cabinet Secretary, told LBC criticism of the service is unfair.
At that point, back in January and February 2025, the civil service was under no illusion that what the Prime Minister wanted was this man to become the American ambassador. And what they did is what is normal in these circumstances, which is mitigate the risks.
An emergency debate will take place in the Commons tomorrow following an application by the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch. Ministers are planning to enforce a ban on smartphones in England's classrooms by law. MPs will get a say after a majority of Lords voted to amend the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. Right now, head teachers can ignore advice to ban the devices. Donald Trump says he won't be rushed into making a deal with Iran as the end of the 2-week ceasefire nears. The government in Pakistan's confident renewed peace talks will go ahead, even though the American lead negotiator and Vice President J.D. Vance are still in Washington. Tehran could yet send their own team. Rob McCare's a former UK ambassador to Iran.
The negotiators will probably be looking to try to do the sort of interim deal that allows the ceasefire to continue and prevents a return to kinetic action, which brings risks for both sides. I don't think it's necessarily guaranteed that's going to work, but that would be where they'd be trying to get to.
2 teenagers remain in custody over a suspected arson attack at a synagogue in Harrow in North London. Detectives are investigating possible links to Iran. A group called the Islamic Movement of the Companions of the Right has claimed responsibility. A woman's been charged with attempted murder and drink driving after a car hit pedestrians in central London early yesterday morning. Gabrielle Carrington, who's 29 and from Manchester, is due in court tomorrow. And the zoologist and TV presenter Desmond Morris has died aged 98. His son says he'll be remembered for a lifetime of exploration, curiosity and creativity. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 59 points at 10,609. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather, clear spells tonight, drizzle in the north with lows of 1 to 4 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8 on LBC. Welcome to Monday's Cross Question. On the panel with me, to my left, Sarah Olney, Liberal Democrat business spokesperson, MP for Richmond Park. Next to her is Joe Robertson, Conservative MP for Isle of Wight East. To my right, Angela Epstein, journalist and broadcaster. And to her right, Alex McIntyre, making his debut on the programme, Labour MP for Gloucester. Welcome to you all. The number to call, 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on that number, text 84850, and you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973, text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, let's go to our first caller. It's David in Caerphilly. Hello, David.
Hello, Ian. Hello. What it is, I'm retired, so I managed to have time to watch today's debate. And I just wanted to make the point is that if the general public are watching this debate and all the publicity that we have heard about the debate coming up, and it's going to be the sort of end of Keir Starmer, or possibly the end of Keir Starmer, because what's going to be asked in the questions in Parliament and so on. And then I kept on watching it, and the longer it went on, Keir Starmer gave the same answer to every single question virtually that was asked by the members of Parliament, including Dian Abbott, which I thought was a fantastic question. But
what's your question, David?
What we're left with is the general public. What is the general public expected to gain out of this debate? Because every single question, the Prime Minister gave the same answer.
Okay.
So we don't gain anything out of it.
Well, I think to be fair, if you're answering questions for, I think it was 2 hours that he was answering questions for, a lot of the questions were fairly similar, so your answers are probably going to be a little bit similar. Sarah Olney.
Well, I was in the chamber at the start, but I'm afraid I didn't stay for the whole lot because, like David, I'm afraid it did get very samey and very repetitive. And I do wonder what the point of it was at all, to be honest. The Prime Minister, we've got massive global instability, we've got a cost of living crisis, and yet the Prime Minister is spending more than 2 hours, it was nearer 2.5 hours, answering questions about his decision to appoint Peter Mandelson as the UK's ambassador to the US. And here we go again. And I think the public are really sick and tired of this. But, I mean, the point is, questions yet again are being asked about the wisdom of that decision. And the Prime Minister has decided to come out fighting and insisting that, I mean, he's literally saying, I wouldn't have made the appointment if people had told me this particular piece of information. But I mean, he knew at the time he made the appointment, he knew about Mandelson's links with Epstein, even if he didn't know the extent of them. He knew that Mandelson had already been dismissed from the government multiple times. You know, to David's point, Dian Abbott, you know, really made these points very well in the chamber earlier on. So, you know, the idea that anything, you know, that I mean, Starmer knew he was taking a risk in appointing Mandelson in the first place, and he should just front up and be like, it was a mistake and I take full responsibility. But he's trying to pretend that somebody else somewhere is responsible. If Starmer is responsible for appointing Mandelson, and we're all getting a bit sick to death of having to go round and round again, sort of more Mandelson-created scandal. And, you know, it was quite tiresome in the chamber today.
But his defence was that he wasn't told that Mandelson had failed the vetting. Now, are you and your party accusing him of lying?
No, just to be clear, I'm not accusing him of lying. I'm sure on that specific point, you know, whatever statements he's made to the Commons today, I'm sure that's true. My point is more broad. You know, it was his decision to appoint Mandelson in the first place, and he must have known at that time that, you know, Mandelson was a pretty shady character.
But I don't remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember Ed Davey calling for Starmer to resign when he sacked Mandelson. Which, I mean, if you're going to be consistent, surely he should have done that at the time.
When he sacked him?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he sacked him when, you know, further information came out, and I think obviously that was exactly the right thing to do. And I mean, I think it was more or less defensible at that time for Starmer to say, I didn't realise the extent of Mandelson's relation with Epstein, and now that I know. But I think what we're going round here again is this kind of like, oh, there's this piece. I think it's the fact that he's trying to make out there was something he didn't know or he should have been told, and it's somebody else's fault. All I'm saying is that Starmer needs to accept responsibility for appointing Mandelson in the first place. You know, it is tedious that we're going round this again.
Alice McIntyre, normally when we have someone making their debut on the programme, I come to them last in the first question, just to be nice. But today, I think it's important to get the Labour side of the story sort of fairly early on in the hour, because we didn't have a Labour MP on in the first hour. They didn't put one up. So let's hear from you. You were in the chamber, presumably?
I was in the chamber, yes.
And how did you think he did? I mean, try and not be too sort of party political, but I mean, and you had Labour MPs sitting all around you. What was the atmosphere like?
I think, like all MPs in the House, they wanted to know what the Prime Minister was going to say. I'm a bit confused by what the Liberal Democrat position is now, because over the weekend we had Ed Davey going straight out onto the airwaves saying he had to resign, same with Kemi Badenoch, before they'd actually got all the facts in this. And I think the purpose of the statement this afternoon, to answer Sarah's question, was so that the House had all of the available information.
Can I just be clear? I think if it has been proved that Keir Starmer has lied to the Commons, then he should resign.
Well, I mean, you know, Ed got his headlines over the weekend before the detail came out, and that's why it was important for all MPs to go into the House today to find out what those details were. And what the details were was that quite staggering, really. The fact that senior civil servants had not told their bosses, they'd not told the politicians that the most senior diplomat that we have had failed his security vetting. And they had multiple opportunities to do that. And I think what was really interesting from the Prime Minister's statement today was not only did they not tell him when he appointed him, they didn't tell him when they sacked him, they didn't tell him when he made statements about the sacking, they didn't tell him when he launched a review of the vetting process. And they only eventually released the information as part of the humble address. That is staggering because, quite rightly, the civil servants will say there's some very personal information that's provided as part of that vetting process. And it's not good for our national security for that personal information to be shared widely because otherwise people just won't share it as part of the vetting. But what is really important is that when the result is known, and an adverse result at that the political decision makers need to be aware of that. It was clear the Prime Minister wasn't. He wasn't made aware of it. And I think it was really important for all MPs from all parties to be able to get that information at the House today. I just wish that some of the opposition had perhaps taken a beat, not fired from the hip. I kind of expect it from Kemi Badenoch. She fires from the hip on a regular basis, not least on the Iran war. Ed Davey trying to get a few headlines over the weekend chased her coattails. But actually what was really important for the House today was to get that detail from the Prime Minister on the record in Parliament so that we could all debate it.
But were you convinced by it?
I think he was telling the truth, and he came forward with an explanation of what's happened. And of course, there'll be more information to come out as we get more documents from the Humble
And you
Address.
didn't feel at all queasy about the repeated nature of him throwing civil servants under the bus, because I can't recall, and I've been covering politics for 35, 40 years now, I cannot recall a Prime Minister ever, Tory or Labour, doing that. And there might be consequences from that.
Well, I think in this particular circumstance, you've got an incredibly senior civil servant, and we're not talking about a junior in the office here. We're talking about an executive level senior civil servant who we would expect to use their executive function to make decisions on a regular basis, who has decided not to share, quite frankly, some really important information, not just with the Prime Minister or the Foreign Secretary, but also with his own boss of the Cabinet Secretary.
But to fire him without any due process?
Well, there was a process. The Prime Minister
picked up the phone and told him he was fired.
He asked the question about why he didn't share that. He clearly wasn't happy with the response that was given. We'll get Ollie's response tomorrow in the House of Commons, but he clearly wasn't happy with the response he received, and he said, "I don't have confidence in you going forward."
Joe Robertson.
I mean, this story hasn't finished yet. And tomorrow we're going to hear more in the House of Commons. We're going to hear more because we've learnt that the Prime Minister knew that when he appointed Peter Mandelson, that Peter Mandelson had been a director of a Russian defence company long after Russia invaded Crimea. And it's a story that keeps unfolding because the Prime Minister refuses to tell us everything. And he only says anything when he's effectively dragged kicking and screaming to the House of Commons. And what we learnt today was, despite Peter Mandelson's history, remember he was sacked from the previous Labour government twice, despite knowing of links to Jeffrey Epstein and those links being revealed in greater detail last September, leading to Mandelson's sacking, and despite further revelations at the beginning of this year, not at any stage did the Prime Minister speak to civil servants or indeed his own number 10 staff and say, what happened with that security vetting? Did anything get thrown up by that? He didn't ask any of those questions.
Well, he did ask the questions. He was really clear today. He asked the question and the response came back that he passed it. And that's why it's such a staggering failure of share of information.
There are two stages of the security vetting, which the Prime Minister was very clear about. One is UK Vetting Service does the security vet and makes a recommendation. What we learned today was that recommendation is that Peter Mandelson should not be cleared. The Foreign Office then cleared him. The Prime Minister never at any stage asked what the recommendation was. He accepts that. He says he should have been told, but he knew it had happened and he never asked. And this isn't a career civil servant.
Why would you? Why would
because
you?
It's Peter Mandelson. Because it's Peter Mandelson. This isn't a career.
If you're told that he's passed, why would you then necessarily seek to question that?
He wasn't told that he'd passed the security vetting recommendation. There were two processes here: a recommendation and an approval. He was never told that the recommendation was to approve Peter Mandelson, and he doesn't say that. So let's not cloud the issue here. We're not talking about a normal career diplomat. They're the people who are usually ambassadors to the United States. This was a political appointment. Peter Mandelson the known and famous misleader of prime ministers past, was appointed by the current prime minister, and he's amazed that Peter Mandelson lied to him. It's absolutely staggering the prime minister thinks that we're fooled by that the British public is fooled by that. And he basically put his fingers in his ears.
The bit that doesn't add up in all of this is that apparently Keir Starmer didn't want Peter Mandelson in the first place, and it was Morgan McSweeney that persuaded him that he should be appointed. Angela Epstein.
Well, as the only, and by the way, no relation. I have to say that every time because of the surname, just to make that very clear for all those that are going to tweet about it. I've heard every insult and I'm bored by it, OK? OK, so it's very easy to get embroiled in the so-called due process of this. I'm not an MP. I represent the so-called lay people here. And I think what will matter to people is not so much they won't even understand it. It's not patronising because lots of us don't. The formalities of the vetting process, the timeline even. But there are things that will stand out that will be hugely concerning to members of the public, the people like myself that put you all in power. First of all, the fact that the then Cabinet Secretary Simon Case said in the November before, he said, get him vetted before you appoint him. Kemi Badenoch mentioned that in Parliament today. 5 times she asked that question. Why did you ignore that advice? How many people are walking around Whitehall whose security vetting has been sort of passed through on the nod? This is a massively sensitive diplomatic position. Really, really sensitive intelligence is going to go across the desk between somebody who had connections with Russia and China and America. And the irony is that the push for Mandelson was because he would know how to handle Trump. How do you have somebody in position who America will then be dubious of because they have all these connections with Russia and China? So I think the average person who may well either be too bored or too overwhelmed by the detail of this in terms of the timeline will think, have we got a prime minister who is at best incurious and at worst completely incompetent, who does whatever he needs to do or say in order to save his miserable political skin and doesn't really think about what's needed in order to govern this country? And is he a prime minister in name alone, or does he have the political nous and judgment and integrity and credibility to do the job that he was elected to do? And this kind of dog and pony show that we've seen this afternoon suggests that no, he isn't. The bigger worry for people like myself, who have always been, I've admittedly of not being a fan of Starmer, I don't think he could run a BAF, never mind a country, is who would, you look at the horror show that might take over. Who is
no way
credible...
to speak of Alex.
Actually, I like Alex. He's a good lad. I'm going to put some money on him. But in all seriousness, who is the credible alternative? Angela Rayner, Andy Burnham from my patch, Ed Miliband, who's already taken Labour to defeat historically. Who is the alternative? So in calling for Starmer to resign, is it better the devil you know? Because who on earth would take over from him?
Alex, let's give the final word to you. Answer this question. What's the mood on the backbenches? Because I think Keir Starmer had recovered a lot of ground in his handling of the Iran war, certainly among people of left of centre persuasions. But he's kind of gone back to square one over the last few days, hasn't he? And can he really recover the position before the May elections, which are, let's say, only 2.5 weeks away?
Look, I think, are people disappointed about the Mandelson saga? Of course they are. The Prime Minister himself is. He's made that really clear. He is kicking himself for making that mistake, and he has made a mistake, and he accepts that, and he's apologised for that. That's the right thing to do. I think, coming back to the point of what was the Prime Minister doing? Well, on Friday, while the leaders of the opposition were hitting the airwaves to call for him to resign, he was in Paris trying to deal with the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and leading on the world stage to try and tackle some of the bigger issues. I've got echoes
of 1990 here, where Margaret Thatcher had to go to Paris and then the next day she resigned.
And I don't, but I'm afraid, respectfully, as a member of the public, forget the journalist stuff and the investment in it politically because of what I do, I just think that's the politics of deflection.
Well,
I don't have two thoughts in your head at the same time.
I don't think so, because I think what in my constituency, what people are concerned about is the cost of living, and particularly the impact that Trump's war in Iran is going to have on their energy bills, on their fuel bills, and actually reopening the Strait of Hormuz through diplomacy. It's the hard yards of politics that often isn't the headlines. That is what the Prime Minister was doing on Friday, while other opposition leaders were looking for the cheap clicks.
OK, we've got a brilliant question coming up, but you're going to have to wait 90 seconds to hear it. It's 19 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
The following is from TfL.
My name was Luna, like the moon.
I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Ooh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Hi, I'm Sava, founder of Cool U, the daddy of air conditioning. For over 15 years, Cool U have specialised in installing our fully internal aircon systems with no mess, no fuss and no external condenser. Perfect for modern apartments, conservation areas, listed properties or simply for those who don't want an ugly unit on the outside. Head to coolu.london. Cool U for a cool, comfortable home.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
Let me reintroduce my panel. Labour MP Alex McIntyre, his MP for Gloucester, is here. Joe Robertson, Conservative MP for Isle of Wight East. Sarah Olney, Lib Dem business spokesperson, MP for Richmond Park. And Angela Epstein, who's not an MP, but she so ought to be. Journalist and broadcaster. Would you ever do it?
Probably not, but also no relation. I feel like I have to say Epstein.
You've already
no
said
relation.
that.
I know, but I'm just saying it again.
I'll do it for you.
Very kind.
I'll do it
Thank
for you
you
next time.
Think of my political ambition.
Right. Phil has an excellent question. Do elected politicians actually run this country? Or was Liz Truss actually right about the blob? I think that is an inspired question, actually. Joe?
Well, that was effectively the Prime Minister's defence today, wasn't it? That, the civil servants never told me that they're running the country and I'm just called the Prime Minister. That was effectively his defence in essence. Look, I think it's a very, very good question, as you've just said. I certainly think with this government, it's very hard to work out whether the Prime Minister's actually running the country. He doesn't look like it.
But if you ignore the Prime Minister in this, the fact that a permanent secretary makes a decision not to inform the Prime Minister or any elected politician, it could have been the Foreign Secretary, about this, I mean, that indicates an entitlement. I mean, I think it indicates quite a lot of things.
Well, let's just be clear. The Permanent Secretary hasn't had a chance to respond to all this. This is the Prime Minister's version of events, and it's very, very convenient for him. He will get a chance to answer tomorrow. I think he's going to be facing questions with MPs. So let's just see what his version of events here will be. But what we do know is that the Prime Minister was absolutely desperate, maybe Morgan McSweeney as well, to get Mandelson to Washington. So the civil servants effectively had their orders and he acted on those orders. But let's just see what evidence he gives tomorrow, because today it was all the Prime Minister's versions of events. And of course, it suits him to say the civil servants are to blame and they're in charge if it saves his skin. We've seen how many people have been sacked just to save the Prime Minister.
I mean, let's be clear, Ollie Robbins has briefed out over the weekend his version of events as well through friends in the media to say that he felt that legally he was not able to share that information. Now, he'll be able to give that evidence tomorrow at the Foreign Affairs Committee, but the position that he has briefed out over the weekend is that he did not feel legally he was able to share that information with the elected representatives. I find that staggering. As I've already said, I understand why we shouldn't share the personal details that are shared as part of the vetting process. I get that. But to not share the results, the failure of that vetting is staggering. And I'm sure all of your listeners will be shocked to know that a civil servant, a senior civil servant, who's not just there to rubber stamp things, as Joe seems to be suggesting, is actually there to use their own, decision-making skills.
But the point is that even if David Lamb, either then Foreign Secretary, or even Yvette Cooper after she was appointed, or indeed the Prime Minister, if they had said to Ollie Robbins, well, as he passed all the security vetting, Ollie Robbins would have said yes.
Well, they asked, exactly, and they've asked him repeatedly.
But that is shocking that a
Committee.
civil servant feels that they could effectively, and I'll use this word advisedly and in inverted commas, lie to their political bosses.
Well, I am shocked. I'm sure your listeners are shocked. It is not the way to run a country. The Prime Minister has made it really clear, and he's already launched an investigation to find out if this has ever happened before or happened since, to make sure that we get to the bottom of it and to change that process, to make sure that that isn't going to happen in the future. This isn't about sharing personal details, as what seems to be suggested by some civil servants. This is about allowing politicians, the democratically elected representatives, to make the decisions that need to be made. Clearly, if Ollie Robbins had told the Prime Minister at the time he'd failed his security vetting, then a different decision would have been taken.
But I thought the role of civil servants is to advise, and the role of ministers is to decide and make the decision. Now, if the civil servant is precluded because of by force of regulation, by dint of regulation, not to be able to declare that information, then they can't do it. And if Starmer knows that somebody who has hitherto been called the Prince of Darkness, and who for all the reasons has been it's been suggested that there is a reputational issue if you want to appoint him, and you're still appointing him despite that controversy, and you have not listened to a previous cabinet secretary saying you should really vet beforehand, but you know that process is going on. There's very little I agree with Dian Abbott, but she's right when she says, why didn't you ask? Why not ask the question? For goodness sake, the guy was a lawyer, but he was the director of public prosecutions. By definition, as a prosecuting lawyer, he has to take a forensic approach to information.
The appointment was made subject to security clearance being granted, and I think what's really important is actually, the Prime Minister's accepted that process isn't good enough. That's the process that we inherited, but we are changing the process. You can always act in hindsight, right? And it's difficult to you can't expectedly go back and change it. But I think
we need to be clear here that this wasn't a normal process from the start, because it is not normal to appoint politicians to ambassador roles. So the Prime Minister took an unusual
Conservative Party.
It has happened. I didn't say it hadn't happened, but
George
it's unusual.
Hollinbury, ex-Conservative MP, was appointed ambassador to Cuba. Peter Jay was appointed ambassador to Washington by his father-in-law.
Paul Boateng to South Africa.
Sorry. Twice sacked Peter
Valerie
Mandelson,
Amos,
who we already knew was friends with a prolific paedophile. I'm sorry, Ian, that is not normal.
Who stayed in his house while the guy's in jail.
Therefore, Keir Starmer should have taken an active interest in the security process. We now know that Keir Starmer knew that Peter Mandelson had been a director of a Russian defence company with links to the Kremlin after the invasion.
Did you raise it at the time, Joe? Did you raise it at the time?
Let's go back to the blob thing from Phil's question. I'm going to read you out a text I got from a friend of mine on Friday who says, I know you're aware of this, but it is well documented that this Prime Minister reads all advice notes, hardly ever marking them, but returning them to the red box. Hard to believe that the PM sat in his Downing Street bunker reading every bit of advice, barring this one. Now, I wasn't particularly aware of that, I have to say, but I am aware of other cabinet ministers who do this, who dutifully go through their red boxes, don't make any comments on the papers that they're given. You look in the Thatcher archives and see all the notations that she made. Surely that is up to the Prime Minister to question what he's given, rather than just having read it.
I can't comment on what he's written on his notes or not. That's for the Prime Minister, and I'm sure we'll get more documents as the humble address proceeds. I think what I would say is, he is someone who goes through the detail and was clear in his own mind, and that his understanding of the process was that the vetting would follow the appointment, and that was subject to that vetting being passed. What I think he was surprised, I think we're all surprised at, was that the civil servant in charge of that vetting decided not to share the result of it with the Prime Minister.
Sarah.
I find the really frustrating thing about Keir Starmer is the number of times, and not just today, but countless times, he comes to the chamber and he says the rules were followed, the process was followed, this, that, or the other, the right thing was done, and we never hear him say, I've made this decision and this is what's going to happen. It's never a kind of, this is me now, and I'm setting up new rules, and I'm doing something new, and I'm doing something different. So I I kind of agree with Phil. I don't necessarily think it's because the blob are controlling everything. I've sat on the Public Accounts Committee for the last 6 years, and twice a week we have senior civil servants in front of us for evidence sessions to explain to us why, implementation of certain policies did or didn't go well. And there's, it's quite eye-opening sometimes to hear the evidence that they give. And there is no doubt in my mind, having, witnessed all of these civil servants over the years, that there is, a sort of an institutional bias. They'd like to carry on doing things the way they've always been done. But 100%, it's up then to ministers and the Prime Minister above all to be like, no, we're going to do something different. This isn't good enough. I want to change. I want to set a new path. And we just don't see that from Starmer in particular at all.
Well, I think
it's always, I am following the process. No, I'm sorry, Alex.
I was listening to a different statement.
Every single time. I'm sorry. Every single question, the rules were followed, the process was followed. He made a decision that he wanted to appoint Mandelson. He should have taken responsibility for that decision. He should, as everybody has said, he knew there was a security risk in appointing Mandelson. He knew that Mandelson had a sketchy past, had some, very dodgy friends. He should have taken responsibility for the decision he made and shown a lot more interest in the security
can I just be really
vetting.
clear on this point, Sarah? So he's come to the chamber today. He said we changed the vetting process. We're going to put that before the appointment. We're investigating how this has happened, and we're changing the way the civil service works.
But
no. But you say you'd like him to take responsibility, but you don't want him to resign. He's apologised. He said that was his decision. He's apologised to the victims. He's apologised again today. He said that we're making the changes to make sure this doesn't happen again. What are you saying in terms of taking responsibility?
Today
it's a glib phrase to throw out there, but what do you want him to actually do?
2.5 hours of blaming civil servants for, and I mean, I don't know, as Joe says, we haven't heard Ollie Robinson's side of the story, and I think it will be extremely interesting when he comes in front of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee tomorrow.
You said you thought he was telling the truth a moment ago. I can't quite work out what your position is. It seems to be changing.
So we haven't heard Ollie Robinson's side of the story. We don't know what I find completely inconceivable is the idea that he deliberately kept, important information from the Prime Minister. What motive would he have for doing that?
That's what the Prime Minister said in his statement today. And you said on this show, correct me if I was wrong, that you said he was telling the truth and I thought he told the truth today.
But if he's I didn't. I said I didn't think he lied. But I mean, what my point is... My point is, we haven't heard Ollie Robinson's side of the story. We don't know what he was doing or what process he was following, what instructions he was following. And it's not just about what the law says or what the process says.
We do, actually, because it's been briefed on his behalf. We know exactly that he thinks that he couldn't tell the Prime Minister that Peter Mandelson had failed the security vetting because of some obscure clause in, the Constitution and something Act of 2010. But actually, if you read it...
Constitutional Reform and
Governance
Act.
That's the one. It doesn't actually preclude him from doing that. It does preclude him from giving the details.
So I think he needs an opportunity to explain why he behaved the way that he did. I think some of the things that are being said, I'm glad he's got this opportunity tomorrow to speak up on his own behalf, and perhaps we'll get more clarity then as to why he behaved the way he did. But the point I'm just making, and it's responding to Phil's question, is that absolutely civil servants will, as I say, institutional bias. They will do what they think, what the right thing is.
Corey is urging me to obey LBC rules and go to the news, even though it's 3 minutes late. Katie Dartford is here with the headlines at 8:33.
Sir Keir Starmer insists he didn't mislead the Commons, telling MPs he's frankly staggered he wasn't told former US Ambassador Peter Mandelson failed vetting checks. The PM claims deliberate decision was repeatedly taken not to inform him. Donald Trump says he won't be rushed into making a deal with Iran as the end of the 2-week ceasefire nears. Doubts are growing over fresh peace talks in Pakistan, with the American lead negotiator and Vice President J.D. Vance still in Washington. The government's denounced that phone bans in England's classrooms will be enforced by law. Until now, it's been holding back on supporting the measure until a consultation closes. And a woman's been charged with attempted murder and drink driving after a car hit pedestrians in London's West End. One woman in her 30s remains in a life-threatening condition after a number of people were struck early yesterday morning. Gabrielle Carrington, who's 29 and from Manchester, is due in court tomorrow. LBC weather, clear spells tonight, drizzle in the north, lows of 1 to 4 degrees.
This is LBC.
The following is from TfL.
I got loads of flowers the other day and messages from people I didn't even know. My mates spelled out my name in tea lights, and my mum hung my favourite footy shirt on the railings next to the lamppost where I got killed by a nice lady Just someone who thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Oh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, what you thought you were getting may not be what you ended up with. From unexpected site fee increases, running costs, a huge depreciation in value, many owners feel they've been missold. If you think this might be you, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive the compensation you're entitled to. Text ASSIST to 78900 to find out more. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
25 to 9 on LBC. We have with us Angela Epstein, no relation, that's her new surname. We have Sarah Olney, who's Liberal Democrat MP for Richmond Park, Joe Robertson, Conservative MP for the Isle of Wight East, and Alex McIntyre, Labour MP for Gloucester. Right, a text question from Ellie. We can do this one relatively quickly. Does this government have just as much contempt for the rules as the last one? Alex?
I don't think that's true. I think that we are a government that is determined to clean up politics. I appreciate when there are things like this in the news that people will look at it and despair. That is why we've got to learn from these mistakes and get it right next time. I remember, not being an MP under the last government, watching the COVID debate and the rules around Partygate, and lots of us lost loved ones during COVID. We were watching funerals over Zoom while people were partying in Downing Street. I think we're a long way from that.
You don't think sort of questions of security vetting and national security actually are rather more important than parties?
I think this is about, this story in particular is about whether a civil servant told the Prime Minister, as he should have, about a very serious decision. Now, national security is, of course, an important issue, but that is very different from having parties in Downing Street while people were locked down in their homes.
But there is a similarity here, isn't there? Because the party that occurred when Boris Johnson was not even in the building, he was at Chequers, and yet Keir Starmer held him accountable for that, even though he wasn't there and knew nothing about it.
I think when the difference here is that when Keir became aware, when the Prime Minister became aware that he wasn't given the full information by the civil servants, he came to the House today to make that clear and to explain that position.
Yeah, but he should have come on Wednesday, shouldn't he? That was Kemi Badenoch's point.
I don't think he should have, because at that point he didn't have all of the information available.
The Ministerial Code says at the first opportunity you have to go to Parliament to explain yourself. Now, he could have said, look, I don't know all the details here, but this has happened. I want the House to be the first to know.
And we'd have been hammered for not having all of the details, and he would have been rightly ridiculed for not having the details in front of him. It was important he got to the bottom of it and came to the House with all of the information. That's very different from Boris Johnson going into the chamber and repeatedly lying about whether or not he knew about parties going on in his own house when the rest of us were living by those lockdown rules.
Angela?
I think this is all classic deflection. I mean, it's real karma here. Starmer was very clear about Boris Johnson having to carry the can and pick up the slack, or use whatever cliche you want, for the whole mess that evolved as a consequence of Partygate. And we have a situation here where it's do as I say, not do as I do. And clearly we have a Prime Minister who is incapable of fulfilling his brief. We're watching a party implode, and it's almost like it's a linear thing, because we've seen the successive U-turns, we've seen his approval ratings go through the floor. He's clearly not cut out for the job. He lacks political judgment, and so maybe we saw that with the implosion of the Conservative Party towards the end of their regime, if you like. This is not dissimilar, and what the public hates more than anything else is this kind of infighting, the regicide, all the stuff that goes with it. We, as members of the public, we want a government that can lead, that can steer us through all the difficult times you've mentioned, economic, instability, goodness me, what's going on, across the world in terms of global geopolitical situation, and we're not getting it because of this.
To one of those.
I know, I was
Sarah.
being seamless.
Well, obviously, I've been an opposition MP, for both governments in the last two parliaments. So I feel like I can pretty much objectively say this government is not as bad as the last one in terms of contempt for the rules. But nevertheless, I mean, when Starmer came in, it was all, we're going to see, higher standards. We're going to see integrity. I missed rules. We're going to be a much better government. And I think that, just to echo what Angela was saying, it's just so depressing to see we've still got all this infighting. We've still got all this mistrust within the governing party. There's still all this plotting. There's still all of this
None
turmoil.
of that in the Liberal Democrats,
No,
obviously.
Absolutely not. We're all united. We're all very, very happy. But there is no doubt in my mind the last government was worse as far as breaking the rules is concerned.
Funny, Ed Davey admitted to me last week that there was a little bit of unhappiness. He says there always is.
No one had ever said it. No, we are all.
Was that while he was bungee jumping?
I think the difference is, look, Starmer said Boris Johnson should take responsibility for his staff, for the people who work for him. Yet when it comes to himself, now he's Prime Minister, he won't take responsibility for his staff or the people who work for government. He'll throw them under a bus and blame them to save his own skin. That's the real Keir Starmer.
Right, let's move on to a text question from Edward. How can peace be achieved in the Middle East? Easy question there. When neither Iran nor the US can decide if the talks are even happening. Today, the US announced the departure of their delegation to Islamabad. This prompted the Iranians to clarify that they're not sending representation and they weren't even in agreement that talks were happening. Sarah.
I mean, it's just, as you say, it's an impossible question to answer. How on earth can peace be achieved in the Middle East? It's so difficult to know really what it is that Trump is still hoping to achieve in Iran, what he was hoping to achieve in the first place. And, how is this going to be brought to an end? And I see Trump making sort of what seem to me to be increasingly deranged statements that are less and less attached to, the reality on the ground. And it just seems as if it's further away than ever. I think to be completely fair to Starmer, he's right that the British don't want to be a part of it, and that's the Liberal Democrats said from the very start, that we don't want to be part of Trump's war, and we obviously maintain that position. But we certainly, as a nation, we need to go a lot further in building our own international relationships. We need to be thinking about where else we can find allies, and we absolutely need to be building up our defences, our military capability. The Liberal Democrats have recommended releasing defence bonds as a way of raising money to pay for the additional defence expenditure that everybody knows that we need, as Lord Robertson was saying just the other day. And I was pleased to see that Rachel Reeves seems to be taking that proposal seriously. So I think we need to urgently look to our own military and diplomatic strengths.
Angela?
Well, I think we're at the language of brinkmanship at the moment, because Iran is only a 3-hour flight away from Islamabad, so they can sort of dilly-dally until the last minute and say whether they're going to come to the table with the Americans, whereas Vance has a much longer flight ahead, and that's just a practical issue. The troubling thing
Probably an advantage that he isn't there.
What troubles me is, look, the Iranian regime, not the Iranian people, who clearly deserve so much more than what they have, are a savage theocracy who deploy the actions of brutal aggression and suppression. We've seen them slaughter their own people. And I'm not sure how you have considered conversations when that's one party here. Both sides want to have some leverage. They don't want to look desperate. We all want the fighting to stop. But I don't know how much you can trust the party that you're dealing with. Obviously, Iran doesn't have all the pressures of the midterms and how to save face in front of its own people. It doesn't care about its own people. If you protest.
So why is it winning the PR war?
I think there's all sorts of. I'm not sure if they're winning the PR war in terms of what.
Well, I think they are. If you walk down any high street in this country now, I suspect you would get more people having some vague sympathy with Iran than America.
Well, I think that I don't think people understand what the Iranian regime represents. They are the world's greatest sponsor of terror. Mm-hmm. They have proxies all over the world. We have just seen arson attacks on a synagogue in London, where there is a very strong suspicion that there is a connection with Iran. We have, thanks to our wonderful counter-terrorism services, we have had foiled assassination attempts, atrocities in this country. They were inching towards full nuclear capability. I would rather have a war now, and rather than second guess a nuclear war sometime down the line.
Joe?
It's very, very difficult to see a way through. The Iranian regime is a continual problem. It's been a problem for years, both in other countries acting through its proxies, but clearly, now on the Straits of Hormuz. And by the way, it was a threat in the Straits before Donald Trump and Israel took the action they did. And let's not forget the attack on our airbase in Cyprus was unprovoked. Very, very difficult to see a way through. I don't think people are more sympathetic or Iran are winning the PR war. There is clearly an unease in this country, and one that I share, that it's not immediately obvious what the US's endgame is here. But that's something slightly personal to the man who's in the White House as well. Let's just say his approach to international affairs is unusual.
You should be a diplomat. There's a job going in the Foreign Office.
He has some clarity. He said after October the 7th, which was obviously sponsored by Iran because of all their vile proxies surrounding Israel and operating in the Middle East, he said that was a moment when he realised Iran couldn't have nuclear weapons.
But you see, this text here illustrates the point I was making. Somebody says, is it Ira? How can you possibly call Iran the world's greatest sponsor of terror when the United States still exists? Now, you and I might think that's delusional, but that person is not on their own in thinking that.
Well, you can't look. I can't police thought. We're not an Iranian regime. But if you saw the Iranian protesters, the march that took place in London, where people were calling for America and I suppose by default Israel to finish the job. Yeah. People cannot lead an ordinary life in Iran.
Okay, Alex.
I think that there's no sympathy in the UK government for the Iranian regime. They are barbaric, and as you rightly say, they were brutal to their own people in the most awful ways. What I would say is that you never make peace with your friends. You have to make peace with your enemies by the very nature of it. That's the whole purpose of a peace process, and that means getting into rooms with people that you vehemently disagree with and really dislike, because that's the only way through this. The only way we're going to have a resolution in the Middle East is for peace. I think what's been really clear, and the Prime Minister's shown, I think, really strong leadership on this, is that we did not want to play a part in this war. We have not played a part in this war. We've seen from the other parties the kind of the hokey-cokey approach of 1 minute they're in, the next minute they're out, and they can't quite make their minds up on whether they're supporting this war or not. But the Prime Minister's been clear from the start that we needed to stay out of it because it's not in the British interest.
Okay. Alex, you will be pleased to know you have a fan on the text screen, which is unusual. The newbie, that's you by the way, is a smooth operator. I'm impressed, says Andrew in Hertfordshire.
That's very kind. Thank you very much.
Is that your wife?
No, she's at home in Gloucester.
I only read that out, so he'll come back if he's invited. Oh. Right, let's move on in just a couple of minutes. It's 8:47.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents,
Keir Starmer has come to the Commons and faced his critics. He's apologised again for appointing Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to Washington. But questions still remain about why he announced that appointment before the vetting process had even begun.
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Train to Cambridge and then all aboard the paddleboards. A little bit different, should be fun. Or wobbly, or wet.
The wetsuit's a good look on you, Steve. Oh, actually, this is very relaxing. Georgie's up the River Cam without a paddle.
Train home, that was such a laugh. I think I might even have a new hobby.
Download the Thameslink Railway app to book advanced single tickets from London St Pancras to Cambridge from only £11. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply.
Oh, Fiona's back at the monkey safari again. She's hooked on Toyota Service and Aftercare. In fact, it's so good, she'll find any excuse to come back. From replacement wipers to service and MOTs, our perks include free refreshments, quiet workspaces, courtesy cars, and a new warranty with every eligible service. Toyota Service and Aftercare. So good, you'll find any excuse to come back. Eligible services are available until the vehicle turns 10 years old or 100,000 miles. T's and C's apply.
Listeners, we interrupt the airwaves to share an incredible discovery. The reason why Britain hasn't been so great of late is because the country hasn't been eating enough Weetabix. We must get to work in rebuilding Great Britain, Bix by Bix. By delivering Weetabix to whoever plans the traffic diversions, to delivery drivers who can't seem to find your house, and people who don't stack the dishwasher properly. To Britain, we must say, have you had your Weetabix?
Experience. It's knowing the difference between a good deal and, well, a great deal. That's why right now you can get a £250 gift card when you take out Saga Health Insurance. You get 24/7 GP access whenever you want it, and the freedom to choose your preferred private hospital with your own room should you need it. Search Saga Health Insurance for a quote today. Start a new policy before the 28th of May. New customers over 50 only. Terms and conditions apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
10 to 9, Alex McIntyre, Joe Robertson, Sarah Olney and Angela Epstein, no relation, are here with us. I'm going to be calling you that forever now.
Pleasure, Iain.
Right, we've got a call from Bess in Arbroath. I was near you over the weekend in Aberdeen, Bess.
Oh, near enough, yeah.
What would you like to ask?
Hi, so basically, my question is that we voted in Labour because they promised a change. Like, they were going to make a positive impact, climate action, shake up the establishment and, be anti-sleaze. But they've basically become, people are calling them the Red Tories. And this Mandelson business just really showcases that. So with the local elections coming up and the Holyrood elections here, I think the Greens are showing themselves as an alternative. And I'm just wondering, do you think people will use their power at the ballot box to send a message to Starmer that Labour's pandering to the right is not working anymore?
And let's not forget the Welsh Senate elections, Bess. Alex, let's
yeah,
start
of course.
with you.
Absolutely not. The Greens are not an alternative in Scotland. I mean, one of their candidates has been disowned this week by the UK or the England and Wales Green Party for saying that they want to close all of the prisons in Scotland. That is deeply unserious and not going to happen. In Scotland, we've had an SNP government for a long time who aren't delivering on people's priorities. The NHS is a mess. They're not dealing with they've been given an awful lot of money, more money by the UK government, and they're not spending it well. A change in Scotland is to vote for Anas Sarwar to be the next First Minister. I think he'd do a fantastic job.
What about Wales?
In Wales, obviously, Labour have been in charge for a long time. There's a totally different set of challenges there. I think the Welsh Assembly, they're doing a great job. And
Welsh Parliament.
Sorry, Welsh Parliament. Sorry.
You've just lost a few votes there, Alex.
I'm in Gloucester. I'm on the other side of the border, so the Welsh colleagues will forgive me for that one.
I don't think they will.
Well, there we go. I think they're doing a good job, and I think that for a government that is working close in hand in Wales and in the rest of the UK, they should vote Labour next month.
Angela.
I think the problem with... First of all, can I give you a piece of showbiz information?
Please do.
Zach Polanski and I went to the same junior school. Oh, that was interesting, said no one ever. No, so it shows me, I know the kind of education he's had, and it makes me all the more surprised by some of the views that he espouses. I don't think they're a realistic threat. I think classically local elections have always been the place to protest. You can see by the low turnout that people, that we see at the polls. And it's unfortunate because local elections, are important for all the things that happen within our local area and the decisions that are made. And I think coming on the back of all the things we've discussed, people are so cheesed off with politics. I'm sorry, I can't put it any simpler or give you a shorter answer. I think if anything is going to disenfranchise the voters and keep them away from the ballot box, it's going to be this.
Sarah, that point that Angela made about they'll get the protest vote, that used to go to the Liberal Democrats, didn't it?
Well, I've been campaigning in Scotland and in Wales, but mostly in London, as you would expect. And I've been out and about across the city over the last few months. And I have to say, I find it really astonishing. Voter after voter that I'm speaking to are all saying to me, always voted Labour, but not this time. But what I haven't been finding is that they're then volunteering who they're going to vote for instead. So I'm not 100% certain, although I may be proved wrong.
Do you not ask?
Of course. And then I say, would you not consider voting Liberal Democrat? What I'm saying is they're not saying, I'm not voting Labour, I'm voting Green.
Right.
And then we have a conversation. And then, yes, they're very very open to voting Liberal Democrat.
In London, there seems to be a bit of momentum for the Greens.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm sure that's right, but I'm not finding it on the doorstep yet. I'm definitely finding a drop-off in support for Labour. And that's kind of universal. I've been in Notting Hill, I've been in Bermondsey, I've been in Queen's Park, I've been in Colliers-Wood, everywhere they're saying they're not voting Labour. But I don't think people have necessarily made up their minds whether they're going to vote or who they're going to vote for. But, as I say, people are very open to voting Liberal Democrat. We expect to make gains across London. We're expecting to do well in Scotland. And Wales is a bit different because they've changed the voting system and the
Well, I was watching an
constituencies
interview that your Liberal Democrat Welsh leader did the other day, which I don't know whether you've seen, but it's one of the most excruciating interviews I've ever seen, where the interviewer very gently said, so you've got this commitment in your manifesto, how much will that cost? Oh, I don't know, we haven't costed that one. And he did this like 5 times. And I'm thinking, this person is leader of the party.
I haven't seen the interview. I can't
look it up. Well, no, actually don't.
Speak for Jane, I'm
it'll
afraid.
Be quite harrowing. Joe.
I think elections are becoming as much about who people don't want in power than who they do want, and that tactical voting. I think tactical voting is greater now than it has been for an awfully long time. But I'm less interested in other parties' fate. I want to, and I am playing my role in our local elections on the Isle of Wight and trying to reconnect with the public. I accept that our party has lost the trust of the British public. The last election was fairly obvious, the verdict, and we've got a job to do to reconnect.
Right. Alice asks, was Kemi Badenoch right to claim that we as a country don't take anti-Semitism as seriously as we take anti-black racism, as heard on the Nick Ferrari show today? Joe?
So this was also in the House of Commons today. She applied for an emergency debate and got it. I do think we don't take anti-Semitism seriously enough in this country. I think she's absolutely right. And I think the government needs to do more. And Kemi Badenoch has offered to work with the government. There's a real opportunity here to do something about it cross-party.
Sarah?
I think that's right. I'm certainly concerned at the rise of what are anti-Semitic incidents. Angela mentioned the arson attack in North London. I think it's just not as visible, and people aren't so as visible as anti-black racism. People are much more aware when they're hearing that. It is becoming more visible, but I think people aren't always aware, if you see what I mean, that certain expressions are anti-Semitic or certain ways of talking about things. And so I think that's why it is less visible, or people are less conscious of it. People don't realise, if you see what I mean, that that's what's happening. It's obviously very evident to Jewish people. I speak a lot to the members of my local synagogue, and they are feeling increasingly embattled, and increasingly feel that Britain is not a comfortable place for them. But as I say, it's racism that's based on colour. If you see what I mean, it's much easier for people who aren't victims of racism themselves. It's much easier to identify.
Alex.
Clearly, the attacks we've seen this week are abhorrent. Any anti-Semitism in our country is not acceptable. The government has got a strategy to deal with this. I think we just need to be slightly careful about creating some kind of hierarchy of racism. All racism, including anti-Semitism, is abhorrent, and we should be confident in calling it out wherever we see it.
Angela.
Well, as somebody who's a member of the Jewish community, it was my family synagogue where the attack took place on Yom Kippur. I was married at that synagogue. I knew the person who was killed. He used to work at my local kosher deli. I didn't know him personally, but I knew who he was. We have seen people being killed on their way to worship. We have seen a community ambulance service run by Jewish people, but for all faiths and none, being firebombed. We've seen arson attacks. We've seen a government that hasn't banned the hate marches, that hasn't prescribed the IRGC, that hasn't banned the Muslim Brotherhood. Jews are only I think about 0.2% of the UK population. We are incredibly loyal and patriotic, and we want to integrate, and we believe in multiculturalism, and we want to get on with everybody. And I also don't believe in competitive suffering. But this is the world's oldest hatred, and it is now being unleashed like some unstoppable poison every single day. My WhatsApp groups and whatever that I'm involved in is filled. It's filled with another example. There was a tube driver today that announced that Jews wouldn't be safe if they went on his tube line. What is happening to this country? There's an old phrase that you can judge a country by how well it treats its Jewish people. We're almost like the canary in the coal mine, because if you can treat ordinary, well-mannered, law-abiding people in this way purely because of their race or their religion or their creed or their ethnicity, then the whole country is going to hell in a handcart because it starts with the Jews, but it never finishes with the Jews. And every kind of racism is abhorrent, but I think the fact that it's happening so frequently, as you say, Iain, now, that something has to be done. People are leaving by the shed load. I have friends all the time who are leaving, who are packing up, and they are leaving this country, a country that they love, because they feel it hasn't got a handle on Jew hatred, and they don't have a place here because it's so hostile, and that is utterly unacceptable.
Right, fun question. Slightly odd one, this, from James in Nantwich. A crocodile was pictured ambling. Can a crocodile amble? Now, there's a question. Ambling into a Zimbabwe hotel in search of food after climbing out of the Zambezi River. The buffet was closed, apparently. Have you ever had a brush with a dangerous or scary animal? Sarah.
Well, my constituency of Richmond Park, as you know, encompasses the actual park of Richmond Park, which has many deer. And I have not personally had a brush, but I have seen it happen on quite a few occasions where people get too close to the deer in sort of mating season, and they are terrifying, honestly. And I've heard stories, and this is not something I've actually witnessed. There's always every year during the summer, if you're walking your dog, keep it on a lead. And I've heard stories about what happens to dogs who go too close. It's not nice. So all I would say is it's happening right now. I'm in the very centre of my constituency. Some really scary wild animals.
So the message is
keep your distance.
Steer clear of Richmond Park.
No. Come and enjoy the park. It is the best. It's the best park in London. But do stay well clear of the deer.
Joe.
No, I'm not sure I can really compete with, a crocodile wandering into a buffet, or indeed...
Sounds like the start of a joke,
Yeah, it
doesn't
does, it does. I mean, all I can think of, it's election season, isn't it? And dogs become suddenly an issue when you're going to knock on the door and put leaflets through and all the rest of it. And I have had a brush with the odd slightly vicious local dog hurling itself at the door as I innocently try and persuade the resident to vote Conservative.
Angela?
I was scared by some fish recently. I was in Thailand.
You're a strange woman, aren't you?
I know. That's probably why you booked me. It's either that or I'm cheap for these prices.
That.
Yeah, obviously, no relation. But I went to visit this beautiful temple in just near in Koh Samui, and there was a lake there, and you could sort of throw things in for the fish. And there were these huge black fish, and because there were loads of them, they all came together and started sort of semi-leaping out of the water. And I felt quite threatened by these fish. You asked, Ian. I'm answering.
So it's going to sound quite ridiculous, but me and my wife went for a walk a few years ago, and we got stampeded by a herd of cows. And thankfully, we got out of the field safely on our walk back. But I think it was just because I was walking back from the pub where I'd had a roast beef dinner.
Right, well, thank you all very much for that. On tomorrow's programme, we have Labour MP Luke Charters, Conservative peer and former Minister Baroness Rachel Maclean, the chairman of the lobby group UK Hospitality, Kate Nichols, plus a historian and My Where Politics Meets History podcast co-hostess. Should I say co-hostess? Yeah, because that'll annoy her. Dr. Tessa Dunlop will be with us as well tomorrow. We'll all try and get a word in, but you never know. Right, thank you all very much indeed for coming in today. In the next hour, we're going to return to get your views on what happened in the House of Commons this afternoon. How do you see Keir Starmer's position now? Because I don't detect any appetite among Labour MPs for a change of leader at the moment. I think from the texts that I've had from my friends on the Labour benches, and yes, I do have them, several of them, well, in fact, it's very interesting. On Thursday, Friday and Saturday, the general mood was, well, what do you think, Ian? Is he basically in the brown stuff? And I had to reply, well, yes, I think he is, having got out of it for the war of Iran. But is that actually going to make any difference? Do you still expect Keir Starmer to be leader after the local elections? That's our phone in next.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, Sir Keir Starmer's told MPs that officials at the Foreign Office deliberately and repeatedly withheld Lord Mandelson's failed vetting checks from him. Fighting for his job, the Prime Minister insisted he hasn't misled the House and wouldn't have proceeded with the appointment had he known. Dian Abbott is independent MP for Hackney and Stoke Newington and former Shadow Home Secretary when a Labour MP. She told Iain Dale she wasn't impressed by the Prime Minister's reply.
I thought he kind of got away with his statement, but it all fell apart when he had to answer questions. And what struck me, because I sit on the front there quite close to him, he seemed quite nervous. And I just don't accept that he didn't know anything and nobody told him.
Two MPs, Reform UK's Lee Anderson and Your Party Zara Sultana, were kicked out of the chamber for refusing to withdraw an accusation that the Prime Minister had lied. Schools in England could be forced to ban mobile phones under new government plans. Under current guidance, head teachers can disagree. MPs are expected to vote this week on amending the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. Earlier, peers backed a similar move. Education Minister Baroness Smith says they've been listening to concerns.
We are committing to tabling an amendment in lieu, which will place the existing guidance on a statutory footing on the face of the bill, creating a clear legal requirement for schools.
Teachers' unions have previously said they'd support such a move. Donald Trump's vowing not to lift the naval blockade of Iranian ports until a deal's reached to end the war. An American delegation's due to head to Pakistan for fresh peace talks, though negotiators are still in Washington. Two teenagers remain in custody over a suspected arson attack at a synagogue in Harrow in North London. Detectives are investigating possible links to Iran. A group called the Islamic Movement of the Companions of the Right has claimed responsibility. Jonathan Hall is the UK's independent reviewer of terror legislation.
It's better to treat this group, assuming as we all do that there's some link to Iran, as an emanation of a foreign intelligence service, because the powers that are available to the police are actually stronger than if they were a terrorist group.
And London is facing travel disruption with tube strikes starting tomorrow. Underground drivers with the RMT Union are staging two 24-hour walkouts over the imposition of a 4-day week. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 59 points at 10,609. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather, clear spells tonight, drizzle in the north, lows of 1 to 4 degrees. A chilly start tomorrow, followed by dry sunny spells for most, windy in the south, with highs of 11 to 16. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
6 minutes past 9 on LBC. It's your calls all the way in this hour. We might play you a few clips from the House of Commons after 9:15, but otherwise I want to stick to your calls because, obviously this afternoon we heard Keir Starmer's statement. You will have heard it in Sheila's show and then through a bit of Tom's as well. You didn't hear the whole thing because it did last 2.5 hours with all of the questions. And I think that the general consensus seems to be, and I think this coincides with my opinion of what went on, that he performed quite well in his statement. He did seem to address a lot of the major issues. There was a lot of throwing civil servants under the bus, which I think may, in the long term, not reflect well on the Prime Minister. But I think he went to pieces answering questions from not just Kemi Badenoch, but Ed Davies, Stephen Flynn, David Davis, Dian Abbott, Emily Thornberry and many, many others. It was a very weak, weedy performance by the Prime Minister. Now, I don't believe that the Prime Minister is going to resign in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks. It would be almost unthinkable for a Prime Minister to resign just 2 weeks before local elections. But assuming those elections go as badly for Labour as everyone seems to think they will, I think that is the maximum danger period for the Prime Minister. I want to know if you agree with that. Or do you think that, no, he's explained himself. It wasn't his fault that he wasn't told that the vetting had failed for Peter Mandelson. And yes, you can argue that he should have asked the question. But frankly, he's addressed the issue. He's trying to put the system right. He's apologised for appointing Peter Mandelson in the first place. What more do you want out of him? That is certainly what's coming through on my text screen from quite a few people. So let's test that out with your calls. 0345 6060 973. Louis is in Guildford. Hi, Louis.
Hello, Ian. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. What would you like to say?
I think I have two points. The first one is really a question whether we want the Prime Minister to micromanage. The Prime Minister has given people jobs to do, just like everybody gets a job and gets a manager. But then we seem to expect the Prime Minister to actually go down and check every other detail that everybody has to do in their job instead of him being a Prime Minister. I think that is not fair on the Prime Minister. And he said several times that processes were followed. Isn't that the joy of this country, that we have processes? Or do we want him to be like his counterpart in the US, where processes are not followed? We are criticizing him for not following processes. And when our Prime Minister follows processes, we criticize him for that. And I think it's not fair. And the second thing is that I completely disagree that he, threw his own workers under the bus. The thing is, when you are given a job to do, you either do it or face the consequences. If the people who were supposed to vet this gentleman did not do the job, or they did it but did not completely feed back as it should be, then the Prime Minister has done the good thing and the correct thing after knowing. Right? He then sacked him after knowing what he did not know.
But you see, even there, he's coming under criticism for acting precipitously. I could never say that word properly, but I mean, he acted too quickly. I mean, I get the point that either he's acting too slowly or he's too quickly. He can never do the right thing. Yeah. But I mean, to sack him on that night, I mean, did seem a little bit hasty.
Well, we don't know the exact details that he got, right? You and I we don't know the exact details. He's told us what he's told us, but in terms of me looking at processes and thinking, if I were the one, if I got some information that then screwed up my type of decision, I have got to reverse it when I know that it's good time. But for us to also keep banging on this and hoping that the Prime Minister should resign, I think, Ian, I love LBC. And thank you for LBC, because it's like a god to this country. But I'm feeling so depressed in these days that there is so much to do. And we have a great Prime Minister. Instead of supporting him to run this country, we are making the communities, the people to feel so depressed. It's like there is nothing else to talk about apart from the Prime Minister's decision about this. Well,
I'm going to disagree with you on that, because I think this is quite important. When an ambassadorial appointment fails a security vetting and the Prime Minister isn't told about that, which is his allegation, I think that is worthy of a big debate. Now, we talk about all of these other issues all the time, so it's not as if we ignore the Iran war. It's not as if we ignore the people coming over the channel in the boats. I mean, we talk about all of these things at length. But if you're seriously suggesting to me that we should be talking about those things tonight, I don't agree with you.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, tonight, this was a big day, of course. The Prime Minister now made a statement about it. So we now have some great idea now of what the Prime Minister thought, what his thought processes were. And yet tonight, during the calls and the question time there, we seem to have the suggestion from other panel members that the big day is still to come. Now, what do we expect when we hear more information in the future? What else do we want to say when the Prime Minister said what he wanted to say? But it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we devoted time to this. It shows how democracy works. It also contrasts us with other parts of the world. But for me, I think it brings out the greatest skill that our Prime Minister has.
Okay.
He's got stamina, and he takes time to make decisions, and he's able to listen to people and reverse when he needs to.
Well, Louis, you know that phrase, you can't please all of the people all of the time. We've got Sharon on a text here, says, this man is talking complete sense. And you know what's coming now, don't you?
I do.
David says, what is this idiot rambling on about?
That's LBC. This is the joy of LBC. And
exactly.
I love it. And I hope people do as well. Because
have you called into my show before?
I have. Remember, I once spoke and you asked me where my accent was from some long time ago.
All right, no, because I was thinking I'd like you to phone in regularly. Thank you very much indeed, Louis. Great to speak to you. Let's go to Hannah in Yeovil. Hello, Hannah.
Hello, Ian. Thanks for taking my call.
Hello.
I suppose my point is, I have a number of points, but the first one is that if Starmer has apologised for appointing Mandelson, saying that it was a mistake for which he accepts responsibility, then I wonder if he shouldn't also take responsibility for the massive, appalling fallout that has happened as a result of that mistake.
Well, I suppose it naturally follows, doesn't it?
Well, I rather think I personally think it was a catastrophic error of judgment, and I think everybody thinks that. And it's ironic that for somebody who is so rules bound and process driven, that he went out on. I don't understand how he went so utterly out of character to appoint Mandelson.
Well, and let's go back to the point that I made in Cross Question, where given that Alva Ray, the political editor of the New Statesman, who's very connected in Downing Street, she wrote a long piece, a month ago, was it? Maybe a little bit more, where she alleges that Keir Starmer did not want to appoint Peter Mandelson to begin with, and he was persuaded to do so by Morgan McSweeney. Well, if he wasn't keen on him initially, then you have to ask, why has he gone to all of these lengths? Why did he go to all of those lengths in the first place to do so?
Yes, and I mean, I find it absolutely credible that Morgan McSweeney somehow. He did have a huge influence, if not hold, over Keir Starmer and the direction of his policies. And I think I can completely accept that it could well have been Morgan McSweeney, who was a great mate of Mandelson, as we know, and Mandelson would, pop round to supper and they worked together in the 2000s and all that. And I can quite accept that Morgan McSweeney would have persuaded Starmer to do it. But then what does that say about Starmer's courage and of his own convictions if he allowed himself to be persuaded by his chief of staff to appoint somebody he didn't want to appoint in the most contentious way?
That goes to the root of the problem in that I don't think Keir Starmer has huge convictions. I think he is a technocrat. I think he's a pragmatist, and he's not a politician that is ideological in any way. Now, a lot of people may think, well, that's a good thing. But I do think if you're going to lead a country, you have to be able to do exactly that, lead, and you therefore have to explain what you're doing to people, explain why you want to do it, and lead public opinion rather than follow it. And I don't think Keir Starmer's been very good at that.
No, I don't. And I think you're right when you say that he doesn't have convictions. And I mean, I suppose if you're a barrister defending or prosecuting, defending whichever brief is put in front of you, you kind of have to separate your own personal convictions from the case you're defending. And I wonder if Keir Starmer maybe that's what made him a good barrister. Maybe that's what makes him a bad Prime Minister. He doesn't have, when he was first elected, I thought to myself, that man has no passion in his belly. He's got no fire in his belly. And he did, of course, renege on all his pledges he made when he was elected. But I think he doesn't have any. I mean, I think actually, in this way, he is slightly similar to Johnson, and not least of all because of the chaos, but also Because I watched him today and I thought, you really genuinely do not understand why people cannot support your "I followed the process." I don't think he gets it. I mean, I don't think he understands why people just will not accept that he followed a process that was there, and that's what he did. And I think that's what he's done all his life: followed the process of whichever organisation he's been in.
I think his bigger problem at the moment, in some ways, is the fact that he's become a bit of a laughingstock, and no politician ever likes to be a laughingstock. When you see these internet memes that have been going around over the last 2 days, I got one this morning, and I tweeted it, where somebody's saying, "I didn't realise I was Prime Minister, nobody told me." I mean, how... and you think, well... that's not a position any Prime Minister wants to get to. Thank you very much, Hannah, for your call. More calls to come in just a few moments' time. And we'll take you through some of the highlights, or possibly lowlights, of the debate or the statement and the response to it in the Commons. It's 19 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm. LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
You know, people ask me, what's my good place? It's in the garden, playing football with my girls. It's also knowing that because my pension is with PensionBee, I get a beekeeper, a UK-based account manager for support should I need it.
You're not very good, Daddy.
At PensionBee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com and be pension confident. When investing, your capital is at risk.
At Lidl, we're giving you 50% off a fruit or veg item on your next shop. Just scan the Lidl Plus app at checkout, and when you scan, you'll be in with a chance to win your whole shop back. Open Lidl Plus and start saving today. Lidl, more to value. 18 plus GB residents, various prices available, subject to availability. Ends 30th of 5th, 26. Full T's and C's apply. See lidl.co.uk/LP-terms.
OK, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life?
We're doing Pretty Muddy.
It's an obstacle course.
There's one for kids.
Runners.
Walkers.
Book clubbers.
Knit clubbers.
10-pin bowlers.
Choir singers.
Lake swimmers.
Gardeners.
Whether you climb it,
slide it,
or crawl it.
Go all in against cancer.
All in to help fund life-saving research.
Sign up now
to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries, see you travel differently. T's and C's apply.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 21 minutes past 9 on LBC. Well, when people often say, "Oh, why are you talking about this? No one's interested," I usually look at my switchboard to see how many calls are coming in. And sometimes you may be right that there is a subject and you don't get a lot of calls on it. And you think, well, maybe people aren't interested in this. We have one space free on the switchboard at the moment. So that, and I'm not saying that LBC audiences are necessarily reflective of the entire population. But if people weren't interested in talking about this, we wouldn't be having many calls. We will come back to your calls in just a few minutes' time. But I wanted to just reflect on some of the things that our guests in the first hour of the programme said, because not everybody listens to all 3 hours. I wish they did. But let's revisit a couple of those. Shadow Transport Secretary Richard Holden gave his view on the sticky situation for Number 10.
The truth is, behind all of this, it seems pretty clear that the Prime Minister, and Ollie Robbins actually wrote a letter to me when I was raising questions about this back in July last year, and he made it very clear in that letter that, quotes, Lord Mandelson was directly appointed to the role by ministers to take advantage of his political experience and skill. He was directly appointed. This is the Prime Minister's judgment. The Prime Minister's judgment to appoint him, the Prime Minister's judgment to appoint him despite the fact that the civil servants had told him to wait for any vetting waiting to come through. It may well be the case that this vetting was waved through, but he'd already been appointed. So it's pretty clear if you're the civil servant that sat there saying, well, the Prime Minister, we gave him the advice to wait for vetting, and he's appointed him anyway. So there's no point in sending anything else through. But there's real questions as well around exactly who in number 10 knew what and when. The Prime Minister seems to have doubled down on the fact that nobody in number 10 was informed today under questioning. I find it, and I'm sure your listeners find it really difficult to believe that, all of these issues have been raised and front pages of newspapers going on for months and months and months, that nobody thought to raise any of this with any senior officials in number 10. It really stretches credibility. I actually think the public have already made up their minds that they're not sure that they don't think the Prime Minister is being straight with them, and I think that's a really clear point here, that he's not being. It's either so incompetent that he shouldn't be in office, or he's just lying to them.
Now, during cross-question, Labour MP Alex McIntyre gave a spirited defence and put the blame on the civil servants.
What the details were was that quite staggering, really. The fact that senior civil servants had not told their bosses, they'd not told the politicians that the most senior diplomat that we have had failed his security vetting. And they had multiple opportunities to do that. And I think what was really interesting from the Prime Minister's statement today was not only did they not tell him when he appointed him, they didn't tell him when they sacked him, they didn't tell him when he made statements about the sacking, they didn't tell him when he launched a review of the vetting process. And they only eventually released the information as part of the humble address. That is staggering, because quite rightly, the civil servants will say there's some very personal information that's provided as part of that vetting process. And it's not good for our national security for that personal information to be shared widely, because otherwise people just won't share it as part of the vetting. But what is really important is that when the result is known, and an adverse result at that the political decision makers need to be aware of that. It was clear the Prime Minister wasn't. He wasn't made aware of it. And I think it was really important for all MPs from all parties to be able to get that information at the House today. I just wish that some of the opposition had perhaps taken a beat, not fired from the hip. I kind of expect it from Kemi Badenoch. She fires from the hip on a regular basis, not least on the Iran war. Ed Davey trying to get a few headlines over the weekend chased her coattails. But actually what was really important for the House today was to get that detail from the Prime Minister on the record in Parliament.
Sir David Davis used to work with the civil servant in question, Ollie Robbins, and here was his view.
He's not a dishonourable man. He is, when I fell out with him, basically he was obeying orders from the Prime Minister, not from his line manager, which was me. Now, he probably thought that was the right thing to do, and it may well be that all of this nonsense that's gone on here was him in a sort of Henry II, Thomas à Becket moment, doing what he thought the Prime Minister really wanted but didn't dare say. After all, from his point of view.
Which is what's happened here, isn't it, frankly?
Yeah.
In that he thought he got his marching orders to get Mandelson appointed.
Exactly right.
So he went and did it.
Yeah, exactly right. And then they invent all sorts of things around it. All this stuff we've had over the weekend of what's called shorthand crack, the Constitutional Reform and Governance Act back in 2010. They said, well, that stops us telling the Prime Minister. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. But it's them trying to reinvent the world to justify Ollie's actions. But as I say, he could well have done it for very honourable reasons, trying to deliver, very short-sighted in my view. The Americans will be pretty displeased with us because of the Five Eyes intelligence stream that goes through that embassy. You see, in American embassies, the CIA is freestanding. They don't report to the ambassador. In our embassies, MI6 and the various intelligence operations do report to the ambassador. So he's completely across it. Now, how do you think the Americans, who are always incredibly sensitive about their intel?
Independent MP Dian Abbott was sitting just along from the Prime Minister. She told me how frightened he looked.
I thought he kind of got away with his statement, but it all fell apart when he had to answer questions. And what struck me, because I sit on the front there, quite close to him, was his hands were shaking. He seemed quite nervous. And I was a civil servant years ago, and I just don't accept that he didn't know anything and nobody told him anything.
So he's lying?
I just don't accept that. It's not necessarily that people told him kind of deliberately, if you like, but he would have known. He would have known.
So when Ollie Robbins says, well, look, I was prevented from convention or the law or whatever from actually telling the Prime Minister or any minister this, you think he should have asked, but how would he have known to ask?
Because of Peter Mandelson's history. Nobody in their right mind would send Mandelson to Washington as our ambassador just on the basis of what's in the public domain.
Well, let's go to Lucy in Bedford. Hi, Lucy.
Hi there. Hi, so I just wanted to say that he just wasn't very convincing in the questions. He looked very sheepish and almost quite not in his zone at all. The thing is, I think he gave Boris Johnson such a hard time with all the lying, and I think we all voted for change, and we thought that we wouldn't be coming across this problem, and here we are again. Really, I also don't think that he really when the ministers, like Rachel Reeves, when she got caught out for not paying enough tax on her rental property or whatever, he just didn't sort that out. He's just let everything go. And I just don't think we've got much confidence in him anymore, really.
Do you think he can turn it round?
I can't see it really. I mean, I'm not going to go to the ins and outs, but basically everyone has a gut instinct, if they really trust somebody. And I think, to be honest with you, at first I really did, and I thought he was going to make a change. But, within the first month, there were free glasses, there was, him going to Taylor Swift's concert, just statements that he made that he thought would be acceptable, just like his son was allowed to stay in a £2 million apartment while he was revising for GCSEs. He was happy to share that, and that was so inappropriate when there are so many young people, that have to revise in their, with lots of noise around them. Apparently his son couldn't revise because of all the noise around Downing Street. It's a distraction. There are kids living on the 20th floor of some, high-rise blocks. They've got to revise and put up with the noise. But it's almost then that it was already them and us. And
I hear what you say. I mean, the freebies, the clothes and the glasses, I completely agree with you. Yeah. On the son thing, I don't agree with you. I think any parent is going to do the best for their children, whatever the circumstances. Yeah. And I'm not going to blame him for that.
Okay, fair enough. But I think that probably a lot of other people wouldn't agree with you. And I just think even we all do the best for our children, but I don't think it was appropriate for him to share it, because did he not think that might sort of give the wrong impression? That he didn't think of other people that might be in the same situation. I don't know. I just don't trust them, really. I really don't. I mean, to be honest with you, I've got more time for Angela Rayner, really, because, she's really upfront.
Well, hang on a minute. How can you ever go at Rachel Reeves for not paying enough tax? I don't remember the details of this, so I don't know whether we're making an allegation here that it doesn't stack up. But how can you ever go at her when you've got Angela Rayner underpaying tax by £40,000? That's the allegation, anyway.
Yeah, but she's removed herself from politics for now. But I mean,
so that's all right then.
Well, neither of them should still be in government, should they? Really, I just think they really presented the front that this was going to be different, and it hasn't been any different. We can't concentrate on all the problems that we have in this country because we're all spending time just listening to his problems about another bad decision.
Okay, Lucy, thank you very much indeed. We'll take more of your calls in a moment, get your reaction to what's happened today in the House of Commons. Is Keir Starmer getting out of this? And what do you expect to happen tomorrow when Ollie Robbins gives evidence before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee? It's 9:32 on LBC. Katie Dartford's here with the news headlines.
Sir Keir Starmer's told MPs that officials at the Foreign Office deliberately and repeatedly withheld Lord Mandelson's failed vetting checks from him. Fighting for his job, the Prime Minister insisted he hasn't misled the House, while earlier Downing Street said he would never knowingly do so. A motorist due in court tomorrow charged with offences including attempted murder and drink driving. Gabrielle Carrington, who's 29 and from Manchester, is accused of running over pedestrians in London's West End early yesterday morning. And the government's planning to enforce a ban on mobile phones in England's schools. Amendments to a bill going through Parliament would turn it into law. LBC weather, clear spells tonight, drizzle in the north, lows of 1 to 4 degrees.
This is LBC.
It was just another day. A familiar drive through familiar country. But then, just around the corner, came the unexpected. He'd let his speed creep a little too high as he approached a bend. And he was no longer driving at the right speed for the road. The scary thing is, he didn't even realize. Driving even a little too fast for the situation is a major cause of collisions, especially on country roads where you don't know what's around the corner. Think. Don't let your speed creep.
The following is from TfL.
My name was Luna, like the moon. I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Your time is valuable. Your perspective should be too. The Economist cuts through the noise with the stories that truly shape your world.
How can you believe that a new regime won't crush you just like the previous one?
Online scams are stranger than they've ever been.
When the world's turned upside down, know which way is up. Read, watch, or listen to The Economist.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:34 on LBC. We're talking, obviously, I think it's obvious that we were going to talk about this tonight, about Keir Starmer's statement in the House of Commons and the reaction to it. Ishmael is in Holland Park. Ishmael, very good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. God bless you, sir. Can I be very honest about this? Because, I was going to say something, but now I kind of changed my mind after hearing all the interviews you just had a minute ago. To be honest, I don't think he should resign because, A, what proof do we have? I heard a lot, if he lied, none of this is actually evidence. By law, you have to be proven guilty. And I'm sorry, so far from the sound of it, he didn't actually know. Okay, so that's the part of the knowledge.
Yeah, but the point Dian Abbott was making was, well, it's all very well to say you didn't know, but you didn't ask. That's the problem. And I think all ministers, whether they're the Prime Minister or the junior Minister for Transport or whatever, their job is to ask questions of the civil servants. And he clearly didn't here.
Definitely, that's the incompetence bit. But in that case, opposition should as well ask, what was the outcome then? If he didn't relate to them, why didn't they ask the Prime Minister then what was the outcome? Why wait for all to ask for it now? And everyone here is saying this and this and this and the hold on a minute. We got Trumps over there, illegal war and everything. Is anyone boycotting, not buying American goods here? So it's okay for murderers to kill, talking about democracy and all of that. And no one's doing nothing about it. But now when it comes to our Prime Minister, who I could clearly is actually, to be honest, I'm not into politics, but I believe that all politicians, I'm sorry, not all, but I don't believe in politics, but I think it's just a lot of nonsense. All of them are lies and cheaters, to be honest to God.
Well, they're not all lies and cheaters. You get the odd one that is, but just as, I don't know what line of work you're in, Ishmael, but I suspect there are lies and cheaters in your workplace, just as there are in every workplace in the country. I don't think politics is really any different from anywhere else, he said controversially. Ishmael, thank you. Let's go to Bill in Exeter. Hi, Bill.
Hello, sir. How are you? How are you, sir?
I'm very well.
By the way.
Long time no speak.
Currently.
Pardon?
West Ham are drawing.
Yeah, no, we don't. No, we don't go there.
Okay, right. But I just want to say, I think politics all about perception, and if the people perceive you to be weak, slightly dealing in nefarious, perhaps not nefarious, but you're dealing in mendacious behaviour, where you always blame everyone else but yourself. And I honestly think he's a very lucky Prime Minister. When he come to power, he was virtually handed the premiership because the Tories were so absolutely rubbish, and they were outused, out of power. They were drained from power. And I just honestly think everything he's ever had, even with the Iran war, the reason why we sent those ships is because we had none to give. And I just think he's ridden the waves of good fortune, and I think his luck is starting to come to an end. And
well, a lot of people would say he hasn't had any luck right from the beginning.
Has he? No. And he's made his own bad luck, hasn't he, with reducing the subsidy to the old age people. And and I just think he doesn't have the touch of the common person, does he? He doesn't have the vibe. At least you could say about Margaret Thatcher, for all the things that she was bad at doing, at least she led her ideology and carried the people. And that's one thing Starmer will never be able to do, I'm afraid.
Well, I think that's the difference between them, in that she was a conviction politician. He's not. Now, some people say, well, that's a good thing. We're fed up with people with too many convictions. They're dangerous. But I think I would rather have somebody who believed in something rather than somebody who sort of decides what they're going to think on any given day.
Yeah, I totally agree, mate. And by the way, you're doing a good job, by the way, fella. Okay, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Bill. Let's go to Kevin in Basingstoke. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Ian. The thing is with Labour, they've done exactly the same thing as the Tories did when they were in power. They went so far to the right to try to compete with Reform UK. And I think it's upset Labour voters, the direction they've gone to. But the thing is with Labour, even before they were, won the election, people were calling for them to resign because they were saying that they broke COVID rules. And they actually said, Angela Rayner and the Prime Minister said, if we have, we will resign.
Yeah.
And they didn't break any rules. And then we had the whole thing about the sunglasses and the suits, and people were saying, they've got to resign. But Nigel Farage, in the first 3 months, he became a Clacton MP. He got £96,000 worth of free gifts. That wasn't in the news. And then the same with Angela Rayner. She didn't pay £40,000, but she did resign. Richard Tiser's just been accused of something very similar, and he was saying that she should resign, but he hasn't resigned. He's just accused, carried on accusing Labour for sort of making mistakes. But Nigel Farage, he gave a job to Nathan Gill. He was sent to prison for 10 years. That wasn't in the media very much either. So they do get.
Oh, come off it! That was all over the media.
Only for a few days. Nothing like the sunglasses and the free suit sauce. That was in the Daily Mail for about 3 months.
Just going back to what you said about the sort of lack of consistency, let me just play you this. This was Keir Starmer in March 2022. This is what he said over the dispatch box to the then Prime Minister, Boris Johnson.
Look, there are only two possible explanations. Either he's trashing the ministerial code, or he's claiming he was repeatedly lied to by his own advisers and that he didn't know what was going on in his own house and his own office. Come off it. He really does think that it's one rule for him and another rule for everyone else.
What do you make of that?
Well, Boris Johnson did break the rules. He lied in Parliament as well, didn't he?
Well, that's why he lost his job.
Yeah, well, we haven't found out if Keir Starmer has broken any rules yet.
Well, he may not have broken rules in the convention, in that similar way, but do you not see the parallels there? That Starmer was accusing Boris Johnson of this, that or the other and saying, well, he should take responsibility, and if he didn't know it wasn't good enough and he was throwing his colleagues under the bus or civil servants under the bus, that's exactly what Keir Starmer has done.
Well, maybe so, but if he has broken the rules, maybe he should. But maybe he should anyway, because he's taking the party to the wrong direction, in the wrong direction anyway. So I'm not saying that he shouldn't go. Okay. I'm not defending him. I'm just saying there's double standards.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying. Yet you seem to be disagreeing with me. Okay, Kevin. Let's take this text from Chris, who says, people keep saying the public are tired of this story. We're not. We're tired of a Prime Minister who cannot take responsibility for anything. Eviscerated in the chamber today, and deservedly so. He ignored written advice from his own Cabinet Secretary to do vetting before announcing Mandelson. He announced him anyway, then told Parliament repeatedly that due process was followed. It wasn't. Every time he's caught out, the answer is the same. I wasn't told. Never his fault. Always someone else. A civil servant sacked, officials blamed, the goalposts move again. This is a man who, as a barrister, built his career on the precise meaning of words. Don't tell me he didn't know exactly what he was doing every time he stood up in that chamber. Well, that is his contention. I mean, the other thing is, this is where I think Keir Starmer really went wrong over the weekend, when he did that piece with one of the political editors, I think it was Beth Rigby, where he looked at her and he said, I am furious. I'm staggered. I'm outraged. Did he look it? I mean, if you're going to say you're furious, you need to look furious. Everyone knows when I'm furious. It comes through in my voice. It comes through in everything I do. Yet Keir Starmer can't seem to articulate that. He says he's furious, but he doesn't look furious. Let's go to Christoph in Wembley. Hello, Christoph.
Hello, Ian. Now, my memory might be letting me down, but I don't recall Margaret Thatcher ever saying that she'd done anything wrong or got anything wrong. I don't remember.
Because she didn't. She did 11 and a half years of getting everything right, Christoph.
I don't remember John Major doing it. I don't remember Tony Blair doing it. I don't remember Gordon Brown saying that he'd done anything wrong, although he wasn't really there for very long. I don't remember David Cameron saying he'd got anything wrong. I think Theresa May might have said she got some things wrong once she was out of office.
I think several of them have done that.
I don't. As I said, my memory might be letting me down. Okay.
So you're giving him credit.
Then comes Boris Johnson. Then comes Liz Truss. Now, to be fair, I don't think Rishi Sunak really got anything major wrong. I mean, I'm not a supporter of his, but I think he was a pretty steady ship captain. And I think Keir Starmer, at least I'm hoping this is the case, is a sort of a different kind of Prime Minister. I think he genuinely wants to get to a position where his government will be seen as, in the long run, having integrity. I think, in the end...
Well, every Prime Minister wants that.
Yeah, well...
they don't always achieve it.
I don't know about that.
Well, name me a single Prime Minister that would go into office thinking, I don't want my government to be seen as a government of integrity. Nobody would ever think that.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
Well, who? Go on, give me an example.
Well, I've mentioned him once.
What, Boris?
Well, yeah, you see, your mind was going the same way as mine.
No, I know, but I don't believe the first day that he was Prime Minister, I don't believe that he thought, I'm going to deliberately have a government that has no integrity. Now, you can argue at the end of it, it didn't have integrity, sure.
Yeah, but I don't think that it was necessarily the thing that thought that was uppermost in his mind either. But I think in the end, I think this episode will be seen really as a bit of a storm in the teacup when compared to so many of the other woes that we have to deal with. But particularly,
you think it's a storm in a teacup for a political appointment to be made as ambassador to the US who failed a vetting process. We don't know the details of that. You think that's a storm in a teacup? Because I certainly do not.
I mean, I said compared to many of the other woes and the other things and many of the other considerations. Remember, he got that decision got a lot of support in the media and amongst other politicians. So, there were obviously a few cautionary voices, but Keir Starmer was certainly not the only person who perhaps made a mistake or got things wrong. Now, okay, he's a Prime Minister, but the reason I think it'll be a storm in a teacup is simply because the atmosphere at the time of his appointment was broadly positive.
That is true. And I hold my hands up to this because I thought it was a good appointment. But then again, how would I know about the vetting issues?
It seems Keir Starmer's claiming that he didn't either.
Yeah.
But at least
he's Prime Minister. I'm not.
Got it wrong.
Unfortunately.
Or
maybe fortunately.
At least he said he got it wrong. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
And I
will give him credit for that. Absolutely. Christoph, thank you very much indeed. Ian says, John Major had an affair. Just saying. What's your point there, Ian? Yes, he did have an affair before he became Prime Minister. Are you saying that having an affair means that you can't do a good job as Prime Minister? Because if so, Lloyd George would have been one of the most terrible Prime Ministers we've ever had, and I would say he's one of the best. Bottom of the class to you, Ian, tonight. It's 9:48.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Henry Riley.
An explanation and attempted justification from the Prime Minister. Are you buying it or is he toast? Plus, a Green MP says not banning greyhound racing is caricaturing the working class.
Henry Riley at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
The following is from TfL.
I got loads of flowers the other day and messages from people I didn't even know. My mates spelled out my name in tea lights, and my mum hung my favourite footy shirt on the railings next to the lamppost where I got killed by a nice lady, just someone who thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Right, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life? Sunday Leaguers, dog lovers, beat clubbers, banker dancers, baby ravers, potters. Whether you walk it, jog it, or run it, go all in against cancer. All in to help fund life-saving research. Sign up to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Got any tips? Your best bet is to head to BetVictor. Why's that? They've got more features than you can shake a stick at. They've got cash out, they've got in-play football, racing, tennis, all your favourite sports. They've got the best odds guaranteed on racing, and then there's the Bet Builder. And of course, you've got the lucky dip. Blimey, dip! I've got to go, fella. It's Nacho night at Casa Redknapp. And holy moly, I forgot the guacamole. Ay, caramba.
Listen to Harry and make your best bet at BetVictor. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. Gambleaware.org.
Experience. It's knowing the difference between a good deal and, well, a great deal. That's why right now you can get a £250 gift card when you take out Saga Health Insurance. You get 24/7 GP access whenever you want it, and the freedom to choose your preferred private hospital with your own room should you need it. Search Saga Health Insurance for a quote today. Start a new policy before the 28th of May. New customers over 50 only. Terms and conditions apply.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
10 to 10 on LBC. Let's go to Shrivan in Hemel Hempstead. Hi, Shrivan.
Hello, good evening, Ian. One point I want to make, a couple of points. But first, I want to address your first caller, the gentleman who said we should give Starmer a bit of a break. He can't micromanage everything. But I disagree. When it comes to security of your diplomatic appointments, security must be over meticulous. You must check everything, even micromanage that. So I disagree with that point. Of course, a leader cannot micromanage everything. He has to delegate. But when it comes to security of diplomatic appointments, you must be overly meticulous and micromanage that. That's my first thing I want to challenge that point. Secondly, broadly, Keir Starmer is useless. I hope he's put out of his misery very soon. The other thing, Ian, is he's never been in the country. Half the time he's been grandstanding.
Oh, no, you see, there you've lost me, Shrivan, because it is the job of the Prime Minister to represent this country abroad. I think if you count up the days he's been abroad, it's not that much more than other Prime Ministers. We've got 2 wars on our hands. He has to go to various summits. He has to go to meet world leaders. That is a big part of his job.
Okay, but Ian, not every time he needs to go. Every time he's going, he took 17 trips, I think, before Christmas. I remember.
Well, you think he should just empty chair and not turn up to these summits?
look, you have to go to some summits, but I don't want to get too much hung up on that, right? Right, you have to go to some summits. I'm not saying you should be here all the time. The other thing, he's got no strength of his conviction. Time and time again, we have seen the commentary have said he's a master of U-turns. He's actually mastered the art of U-turns. Today, his performance was lackluster. When he came into power, many of this nation had their hopes invested in him. They thought he will do something for us. He's done nothing. He's just, like you said, technocrat, box ticker. I think he'd be better off managing ASDA. No, seriously. The quicker he goes, the better. Put him out of misery. He's got no backbone, no conviction. And I think a lady, very nice one called Ellie, says he's got no fire in his belly. She's right. That instinctive a bit of fire.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Okay, Shrivan, thank you. Back to John Major. Alan says, Major had a 4-year affair while in power. As usual, you have a tenuous hold on history. The person who he had an affair with is a friend of mine. Her name is Edwina Curry. The affair was not 4 years long, and he wasn't Prime Minister when the affair was going on. It had ended by the time he became Prime Minister. He then offered her a junior ministerial job, which she was insulted by and turned down. So if anyone's got a tenuous grasp of history, Alan, I'm afraid it's you. Chris is in Richmond. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Ian. I just can't believe that Keir Starmer is trying to worm his way out of this one, right? Can you imagine if this was an NHS trust that appointed a finance director with a conviction for fraud, or a head teacher of an academy trust that appointed someone with a conviction for paedophilia or child abuse, and they didn't ask for the outcome of the DBS check? I mean, this is just ridiculous, isn't it, Ian?
Well, I mean, I think you're kind of exaggerating to make a point. I mean, if he is correct in saying that he didn't know that he'd failed the vetting, I mean, you can't blame him for going ahead with the appointment. If he thought he was the right man for the job at the beginning, despite his known connections with Epstein, then and then the vetting, according to Ollie Robbins, was fine, which of course we now know it wasn't, then can you really blame Starmer wholly for that?
But do you really believe that a senior civil servant in this country would cover something up as significant as that?
Well, he doesn't look at it that way. He looks at it from the point of view that he was obeying the regulations.
Yeah, but the reality is you carry the can. You carry the can if you're the Prime Minister. I mean, I'm surprised that I don't know if you've been deliberately sort of challenging me on this one, but
well, my job is to play devil's advocate, as you're well aware.
Of course it is. But in the corporate sector, which I worked in for 32 years, there's no way a CEO would survive.
32 years? You're only 42.
I'm 52, my friend. 52.
I was being kind.
If only. But no, in all seriousness, though, think about it in any other kind of private sector, charity, whatever. The man at the top or the woman at the top would carry the can for this. You can blame others, you can throw them under the bus. You ultimately are in charge and are accountable. And he made the decision. It's quite clear he made the decision. Journalists said it was a great idea. Nigel Farage said it was a great idea. Maybe it was a great idea.
I said it was a good idea.
But at the end of the day, what is the point of a security vetting? If because the other thing that worries me here is it sends the message that what about MOD people or other members of the government in very high, important MI5, MI6? We have to have confidence that this vetting process is robust and the recommendations will be adhered to. Sometimes there's going to be...
Well, it clearly is robust unless a senior civil servant intervenes to make it less robust.
I just... In your half-hearts, do you really believe that civil servant intervened? For what reason would they do that other than to try and protect the Prime Minister? I
don't think it was done to protect the Prime Minister. I think Ollie Robbins, and we'll see tomorrow when he appears at this select committee, I think his motivation was the Prime Minister has made it clear he wants Mandelson to be appointed. My job as the Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office is to make sure that happens.
So you think he actually lied to him, or was it that Starmer just didn't ask the right question, as Dian Abbott quite rightly said in the House of Commons today? It's still not clear to me.
Well, I think that's exactly what happened, that there were no questions asked. Now, can I, hand on heart, say that would have been different with any other Prime Minister? I'm as shocked as anyone to find out that a civil servant can just overrule a security vetting. I mean, I would have thought that the security vetting was just that. It would never have occurred to me that it just could be overturned on the whim of a senior civil servant, let alone then not actually informing the Prime Minister.
Well, no, I agree. But
who holds the power in this country? Surely it has to be the politicians that can be held to account, because the civil servants, the only way they can be held to account is if they're sacked. And of course, Starmer sacked Ollie Robbins immediately with no due process whatsoever. Now, I'm sure Starmer, if he was that angry and had lost confidence in him, he regards that as a reason to sack him. But he may rather regret that when he watches the evidence tomorrow.
Well, I agree. It'll be interesting to see whether there's an employment law case, because frankly, if the guy thinks he's been thrown under the bus unfairly and there's evidence to come out, that guy, just like with Priti Patel in the bullying situation, will be taking the government to the cleaners from an employment law situation. Tomorrow they'll get out the popcorn. I think I'm going to be busy working, but I'm sure everyone else will find it very interesting watching.
I shall be getting up extra early to watch. It begins at 9 a.m, which I would imagine that my colleagues on LBC News will be carrying this live tomorrow for anyone who can't watch it. But I think it is going to be a very, very interesting session. Chris, thank you very much indeed. Now, one good thing about this is from Shahid, one good thing about the unpopularity of Starmer and co is that it might make the so-called moderates realise that they were never that good, highly overrated, and should never again try and derail centre-left Labour leaders' chances again. Now, if you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on both Global Player and the brand new LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news and opinion, put your news categories in the order you want, pause and rewind live radio, and listen to a range of podcasts. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's James Max. But now it's time for Henry Wright.
Thank you very much, Ian. Good evening. At 10 o'clock.
It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information.
An explanation, an attempted justification from the Prime Minister. Are you buying it, or is he toast? Other MPs had their say.
All of these people fired for a decision he made.
The only decent thing to do is to take responsibility.
Peter Mandelson